Morning. Welcome to the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority Commission. Today is Friday, October 24th, 2025. This meeting is being recorded. Commissioner Sheik,
Here.
Commissioner Graves,
Here.
Commissioner Bass, Commissioner Gruhl,
Here.
Commissioner McMorrin, Commissioner Perkins,
Here.
Commissioner Rodriguez, Commissioner Saunders, Commissioner Slaza. Here. We have quorum.
Okay. I'm going to rejigger things around the agenda, even as I was told, because we want to acknowledge our Commissioner Omoto Frias, who has now left the commission but is here, and we want to acknowledge her before she needs to go on with her day. So I wanted to share that Commissioner Omoto Frias was appointed to the LAHSA Commission by Hilda Solis, Supervisor Solis, on May 27th and served until September 26, 2025. And during her, even if it was a short tenure on commission, she served on programs and contracts, audit, and finance committees. So extra credit for all the committees, basically. And really was just a wonderful voice of reason and kind of cutting through a lot of the chatter at moments that we needed it most. And I really appreciated that. We thank her for her contributions and sincere commitment to serving our community. So we have this lovely, if anyone else would like to say anything, we have a lovely plaque
I just
as well.
want to add, yes,
Yeah.
you were a great voice and on budget, and in our selection of Gita, and she asked you those tough questions, didn't you, Gita, in that? But I told her, you may not be on the commission, but you are still in the Board of Supervisors, and boy, we're going to have another advocate within there in the office and to keep us in line. So thank you, Tammy. Really, it was really a pleasure to have you as part of this commission.
Tammy, we will miss you so much. I want to tell people that Tammy is the only person that comes so prepared to the commission and all meetings that she could tell you where there are grammatical errors in the documents. She reads them so closely. So we'll miss you.
That's a superpower. Okay. On up. This is for you. Do the things. Well. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, good luck. Yes, thank you. Okay. I do like starting off meetings like that. Positive. Let's go into land and labor acknowledgement, please.
The Los Angeles Continuum of Care and LAHSA acknowledges our presence and work on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Gabrielino, Tongva, Kizh, and Fernando Tataviam, and Chumash people. LAHSA acknowledges the native peoples of this land as the land caretakers of our region. We acknowledge that homelessness did not exist before colonization of this land, genocide, and our governmental policies of erasure and land and wealth dispossession. We express our deep gratitude for our ancestors, elders, and protectors, past, present, and emerging, who steward this land.
You want to move the mic closer?
Oh, sure. And for our labor acknowledgement, we've decided that going forward, we're going to update the labor acknowledgement to highlight a new figure each month. We honor the life and legacy of Bridget Biddy Mason and all labor in this nation, both enslaved and emancipated. This month, I'd like to shine a spotlight on Dolores Huerta. Huerta co-founded the National Farm Workers Association with Cesar Chavez in 1962. The union later became the United Farm Workers, the oldest Latino organization to come out of the civil rights movement and the largest farm worker organization in America. Working side by side with Chavez and in her own right, her accomplishments are vast. This acknowledgement reminds us that the progress we strive for is rooted in the work, care, and courage of those who came before us. We honor Dolores Huerta, whose lifelong advocacy for fairness, dignity, and thriving communities continues to inspire generations, and recognize the countless farm workers, domestic workers, and labor organizations whose efforts have paved the pathways towards justice and opportunity. Her powerful phrase, "Se se puede," captures the enduring spirit of determination and the belief that collective action and perseverance make meaningful changes possible. She had that saying in 1972, so she was way ahead of her time. Let us continue building thriving, inclusive communities grounded in respect, compassion, and partnership to sustain Los Angeles. Thank you.
I love that. And I love switching that up too. Wonderful. Can we get a motion to accept the minutes from the September 20th?
We don't need a motion to accept the minutes.
Just kidding.
There are changes.
Do we do anything then?
Just accept.
Just accept it. Okay, sorry.
So,
I was
yeah.
like, what am I supposed to do here? Okay, so we will accept the minutes from September 26th. Thank you. Thank you for your guidance too. Okay, let's go into the CEO report.
I have a lot of things to cover today, so I'm going to try and get through it all in a as most quickly way as I can. Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you. First, I'm going to talk about organizational transition and strategic alignment. The top issue facing LAHSA now through the start of the next fiscal year is, of course, the upcoming transition of funding from LAHSA to the new county department, HSH. We've been meeting with our county partners to learn more about their plans, and we've been working hard to support staff through the transition and to prepare LAHSA for the loss of county funding. During a later item, I believe the county will be speaking. Liz will be here speaking from County CEO HI to share more information about the transition in her report. I also want to acknowledge that CAO from the city, Matt Zabo, will be here later this morning and will provide us an update on the city's planning process. We appreciate our funders being here to share their perspective and answer the commission's questions directly. Everyone at LAHSA has felt the uncertainty about the future of the agency and the system amidst the ongoing transition to HSH. This week, our county partners have confirmed that nearly all county funding will transition from LAHSA to HSH, except for the core COC administrative functions and data functions. This decision means that the wide array of critical county-funded programs that LAHSA currently manages for the county will no longer be overseen by LAHSA. COC-specific functions such as the homeless count and oversight of HMIS will remain with the agency. Our county partners have made it abundantly clear that they are facing a $300 million deficit for the fiscal 26-27 year. As a result, funding for the programs will need to be curtailed or cut entirely by the county. Through the remainder of the current fiscal year, LAHSA will continue to work with its external partners and stakeholders to coordinate and align a unified system vision. I've said before, and I'll say it again, that LAHSA will play a pivotal role in this transition as we face the challenges ahead. Our central purpose will always be to end unsheltered homelessness and get people housed. The city, county, and LAHSA cannot silo away from each other during the remainder of this transition process. We need to remain transparent, open, and honest in our communications with each other to ensure that we are setting up the best possible plan for July 1st, 2026. As commissioners, we need you to engage with the committees, your communities, and elected leaders to ensure that our funders' decisions reflect the priorities that are being voiced on the streets. The county is asking LAHSA and the public to engage with them to help determine the programs, services, and funding streams that will be needed to be cut from the upcoming county budget. The county has shared that they will be setting up project plans to unbraid the funding that LAHSA currently operates, and they will need to make some challenging decisions about the direction of the funding. Finally, the county's consultant, Changewell, is holding 4 staff engagement sessions in November to gather input from LAHSA staff about the transition to HSH. Our HR team has been meeting with Changewell and will have solidified dates for engagement by next week. As interim CEO, my top priority is our staff's well-being and stability. We are doing everything we can to prepare our staff for the transition, whether they move to the new county department or not. Over the last month, our HR training team has hosted 5 trainings on resume and interview practices, and so far 30 staff members have attended. Also, our joint collaboration sessions between the county and LASA Human Resources have begun. We have open and honest conversations regarding the transition of LASA employees to HSH, including the county's employment application process. We are also seeking more understanding of the county's process for mass layoffs. As we know, LASA will look very different in this next fiscal year, and we're doing everything we can to be proactive about the upcoming funding cliff and prepare for what's to come. Now I'm going to talk about operational stability. While LASA is losing the majority of its county funding, there are several ways that we can save and secure funds in order to move forward in our mission to address homelessness in LA County. When I first started, I wanted to explore cost-cutting measures that will help us reduce our overhead and admin costs. I appointed and assigned our Deputy Chief Senior Advisor, Lakeisha Williams, to review LASA's operations and identify cost savings. Lakeisha is exploring potential savings in three key areas: our facilities, things we rent, our fleet vehicles, and our IT assets. Next month, Lakeisha will give a more detailed presentation on cost savings that she has found. We're currently projecting about a $1 million year-on-year savings just from the cost cutting that we've explored. This is going to be essential in assuring that we can continue funding critical staffing and direct services for our unsheltered neighbors. Now I'm going to address our contracts reorganization. As we all know, that's been one of the main issues for our funders. At last week's Program and Contracts Committee meeting, there were some questions about the 2025 contracts that are not yet started drafting or have been drafted but are not yet routed for approval and signature. There are no base contracts that have not yet started. There are currently only 3 base contracts that are in drafting. One is with the contract specialist. The EGMS record needs to be addressed for one TLS contract before it can move forward. And funding was identified last week, and we're waiting on the funder agreement to move forward with one safe parking contract. 2 contracts have been drafted and are not yet routed for signature. There was a technical issue on EGMS for one federal contract, and we're waiting for the service provider to make corrections for one winter shelter contract. But we do know we need to refine our contracting process in order to avoid similar delays in executing contracts in the future. This is a core function of LASA, and we're reorganizing our teams to respond to the changing needs of the system. Currently, our contracts are managed by 3 departments. Funder relations and allocations are managed by the Funding and Allocations Department. Procurement and execution of contracts is overseen by the Contracts and Procurement Department. And grant management, provider invoicing, and monitoring of performance and compliance is overseen by our Grants Management and Compliance Department. To streamline our processes for efficiency, we're merging units within these departments. The Contracts and Procurement Department functions will be reallocated across the teams. The Contracts unit will be integrated into GMC, and this expanded team will now manage the grant's full life cycle, from drafting contracts to execution and grants management. Now, LASA's provider and vendor contract portfolio will be distributed across 35 staff members instead of 9. This will ensure the new GMC workload remains manageable. All invoicing will shift to Finance Department. Lastly, the procurement unit and the funding and grants unit will be integrated into a funding and allocations department. Between November 5th and November 21st, GMC and contracts staff will be retrained for their new duties in the contracts performance monitoring and contract execution. After each training module, staff will be assessed to inform management of what topics need to be covered in follow-up trainings. This will be opportunities for staff to practice new skills before each assessment, and staff will be evaluated after each training so management can provide continued support. These enhancements will allow us to meet the needs of our funders and our service providers. We know the delays in contracts have been an undue burden on our providers, and that cannot continue. We believe these changes will make us more efficient and adaptive to the changes in the system. Now I'm going to discuss HAP 6. At previous meetings, our CFO, Janine Trejo, discussed the 6th round of HAP funding. I want to echo her sentiments in light of some more recent developments. During our call with our regional partners last month, CEO HI raised their concern that the state may not distribute HAP 6 funding until June, July, or August 2026. We initially anticipated the disbursement of funds in March 2026. This presents a significant cash flow for Q3 and Q4 of 25-26 funding year, which will hinder LAHSA's ability to fund service provider contracts tied to HAP 6. The county and the city have provided temporary cash flow for Q1 and Q2 respectively, with the expectation that LAHSA will repay those funds once HAP 6 is received. To date, our funders have not committed to providing advance funding in Q3. If we don't receive HAP 6 funding from the state by Q3, we will not be able to repay the county and the city on time. And in Q4, we will be unable to pay HAP-funded services for time-limited subsidies, interim housing, access center, and problem solving. In light of this timeline, we need the Commission's support now to advocate for the timely execution of LAHSA's funder agreement and disbursement of state funds, HAP 6 funds, in February of 2026. The early release of funds will be essential to preventing service disruptions and ensuring LAHSA can meet its financial and programmatical commitments. Although the timeline for disbursement of HAP 6 funds is uncertain, we've also had some productive meetings with HCD regarding our application. We've received clarification that the data we initially submitted was acceptable and that we will not need to share a plan in our application to address the individual housing plan for every person experiencing homelessness unsheltered in LA County. Instead, the state is requesting revisions to our narrative for the services in our region that provides for people experiencing unsheltered homelessness outside of encampment outreach. Our final revisions will be submitted by November 5th, after which the state will conduct a final review of our application. As for HAP 7, we've heard from the state that they are considering how to amend the HAP 6 statute to continue the 6th round without requiring new applications for jurisdictions. However, HAP 7 is still projecting to be half of the entitlement of HAP 6. Now I'm going to discuss HUD and the COC. As we all know, the federal government is on day 24 of the shutdown, and HUD offices have remained closed throughout this period. We will not have received the NOFO from HUD still. During a later item, our Associate Director of COC Planning, Jess Reed, will provide an update on our current planning for the immediate future and more broadly, how the administration's priorities have impacted the COC's long-term planning. The State Interagency Council on Homelessness has indicated in recent discussions they do not want HAP funds to be used to cover anticipated PSH funding gaps following the NOFO's release. They're exploring other funding to help us address that issue. Lastly, I'm going to discuss the RAND report. Recently, RAND published a report that critiques LAHSA's point-in-time count methodology based on their experiences in just 3 neighborhoods of Los Angeles. Although our county-wide data and RAND's neighborhood-focused study both show that unsheltered homelessness is trending down in our region, those 2 reports cannot be directly compared. RAND's methodology is significantly different than what LAHSA uses for its PIC count. In accordance with HUD standards for data collection and reconciliation, our PIC count represents a 3-night snapshot of unsheltered homelessness in the entire county. RAND's study was a year-long deep dive longitudinal study in 3 specific neighborhoods using professional people to canvass the area. The PIC count isn't our only tool for understanding homelessness in the region, but it's an essential snapshot that sets a consistent benchmark, but it's not the last word on understanding homelessness in our region. While we weren't given a chance to review RAND's report before its release, we welcome the opportunity to compare methodologies and enhance our understanding of the data. We have invited RAND to meet with us and participate in future PIC counts and submit a bid for the upcoming RFP for a technical partner for the 2027, 2028, and 2029 counts. This concludes my report. I know it was a lot of information, so we're here, myself and my team are here to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. And very thorough and transparent, which I know in the tough times, hard to give some of those reports. Because there wasn't a whole lot of good news in that. Other than the fact, I think with the Rand report, when it was quoted in the LA Times, they acknowledge that homelessness has gone down. So I think that was an important part. And I think your outreach and engagement and have encouraged them in the past to actually to apply, and they had not during the last time in which I've been on the commission. So I had a question, just two things. One on the HAP6, and then also on HUD's response, maybe the HUD response. So HUD is saying that we can't use any of the HAP6 to meet any gap that may be existing because of their funding not coming through. Is that what I heard you said?
The state is the
State.
state.
State said we could not.
Yes, it
Okay.
doesn't want us to.
Doesn't want us to. Okay.
They're gonna look for another source for that fund.
And then on the timeline, because we have had a conversation and I have started to make my calls on helping out on the HAP6 which we did on the most recent one too, to get it out.
Absolutely.
And that second tranche. So this would be the actual application, and then it would be the first tranche that you're asking for to come in February is what you need.
Yes, the first tranche.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Okay. And have they ever done it in February before?
Let me ask our CFO. Do you know?
I'm just curious if we're just asking them to do the normal thing or a little bit more.
CFO Janine Trejo. HAP 5 was the executed agreement was received in December, and the disbursement was received within the first week of January. So there is precedent for us receiving it within Q2 or even Q3.
Great. Thank you. That was my.
Janine, if it doesn't come, is there conversation? Because what's happening now for quarter, so county advanced a quarter, city advanced a quarter, third quarter is shared advance? Who's covering third quarter?
So you are correct. The initial agreement back in June between the city and the county and LAHSA was agreed to on June 18th. And that had noted that the county would be cash flowing Q1, which they did. The city would be cash flowing Q2, which they did. And that the city and the county would split the cash flow for Q3, knowing that the timing of the execution of that would potentially be coming into Q3. And that, I believe, is still, the county still has to discuss with the city on that.
I think we have a representative from the county here. Sarah, would you like to weigh in on that? I just see indication there. Sorry about that. Yeah, just.
Hi, Sarah Mann. I'm the director of the Department of Homeless Services and Housing. So my understanding, I was not part of the original conversations and agreement, but my understanding is that the county agreed to front Q1, the city agreed to front Q2, and we would revisit Q3. We have notified LAHSA, GITA, and we have notified the city. We met with the city again on Monday and notified them that the county is not in a position to be able to cash flow Q3. And so this is why we have been for a number of, like at least a month now, publicly lifting up as part of our spending plan process, the real need for the HAP Tranche 6 funds to get released.
How much is a Q? Sorry. I'm curious. Yeah. What is the nut there that for?
Janine will have that.
Okay.
Yeah. And we've asked for some additional information, including on spending and all of that. So we're happy to try and work where we can, but we are in our own fiscal crisis as well.
And I want to lift that up, that is a change of what was happening before, because we had an agreement that the money would be split. And so we understand the county is facing dire need, but it is a change, a huge change.
And just to clarify, it was on June 18th that we did receive notification from CEO HI that the cost for Q3 would be split, and that it's approximately 17 million. So that would be about 8.5 million for the city and the county to share the cost. That will create cash flow issues for the service providers to have to carry those expenses. And if there are any further delays in the execution of the HAP 6 agreement that pushes us beyond Q4, service providers are already facing the cash flow issue for Q4.
This is why I think it's so important that we really approach the state together, because the county is facing issues and then we will then face tremendous issues.
The city has said they can provide $8.5 million for Q3.
No, the city
Right.
and county are both in the same position.
That's exactly right.
I believe Matt Zabo will be here shortly.
Yes.
To speak.
Because,
And yeah, the city has not told us that they're going to have a problem giving us the money.
so
So we will wait till Matt will be here shortly.
okay, we have been, obviously, I'll actually give credit where credit's due. Commissioner Rule has been advocating using, her connections. I know other folks have been too. We're trying to sound the alarm as much as humanly possible. But honestly, using a meeting like this, can somebody tell me functionally what happens if this does not get funded, like in layman's terms, to underscore the importance of it?
You will have households that are not receiving their rental assistance, and you will then have households that are facing eviction due to the rental assistance, because TLS is included under there. You have interim housing sites that may have to shut their doors because they will not have the funds to continue the operations. You have access centers that may have to shut their doors for the family system because there is not any cash flow or funding for them to continue their operations.
So what you're telling me essentially, and I'm sorry, I'm just like laying on this, but I think it's so important for everyone to understand that folks that have exited homelessness will re-enter homelessness because of this money not being released. And because of shortfalls at the city and county, which that's not like a fault of anyone's in particular, we can't cover that for ourselves as a region, as we have been doing to cover up for the state's delay in funding. And so if the state does not do that, we do not have local resources to cover that. That is correct,
That is
right?
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, but we should hear directly from the city about that.
Okay,
When they.
so we'll ask him when he comes, but is that clear to everyone in the room? Yes.
So I just have one question. If the county gets assurance that they will get and I think once you come up and report again, we can talk about this, then they will then proceed to provide the cash flow with the city for Q3.
I think that's a question for the county. You want her to come now? It's up to you.
Maybe if you can, that would be great.
Thank you, Sarah.
So, and this is something that I will say is something we're actively looking at and working on. We're obviously committed to ensuring that no one is exited to the street unnecessarily. There is no immediate cash available for us to front Q3, and how we handled Q1 was by allowing LASA to use Measure A funding that had been allocated. So it's funding for like Measure A funded slots. That's for Q3 and like Q4 of this year. We allowed them to use that funding for Q1. And so the issue that we have is it's like a double hit for us. So if the state funding doesn't come, not only do we not have funding for the HAP, we then don't have funding for the Measure A funded, the county funded slots later this fiscal year.
Thanks. It's pretty clear that the happiest path here is for the state to release this funding for us, because that would solve a lot of problems. So I think that we need to figure out the ways to maximize the advocacy for that. And this is the path forward to get through this.
Janine Trejo, CFO. I would just like to provide clarification on the cash flow. The agreement was that the annual funds for Measure A for TLS would be front loaded. So TLs for Measure A, that is covering the first 5 months of the system. HAP 6 is then coming in and picking up the remaining half. So it wouldn't be any further commitment to A, because the annual funds for A are being used in the first 5 months. So it's essential that we have access to cash flow for the HAP 6, since the HAP 6 is being leveraged to cover the last half of the system. And so again, there is no further commitment or leverage to A in that sense. And for Q1, beyond the TLS, that was 6.9 million that was advanced from the CEOHI to cover the access centers, which were the adult access centers, the family access centers and the adult access centers were ramping down as of 12/31. as well as the interim housing beds for Q1. So that is how the system is being cash flowed right now. And that's why without the cash flow for Q3 and or the HAP 6 funds, this is a cash flow crisis for the system and for the service providers. And one thing that I would further like to note is all of the HAP 6 that is being cash flowed by the city and the county, none of that cash flow goes to LAHSA. All of the funds are directly going into the system for the service providers. So it is impacting 100% the service providers without that cash flow.
Well, just one more thing on the RAND report. As Commissioner Gruhl said, it did come out that the count is going down. And Gita, thank you for your report on that. And I encourage RAND to respond to our RFPs for counts because they could be a huge technical partner for us. I know many people on that board, so I hope the board talks to their executive director and really, really responds to our RFPs.
Thanks. I just wanted to ask about, thank you for your presentation, Gita. I mean, when we were here last month's meeting, you had raised questions, you raised concerns about some of the decision-making you're looking at for cuts that you're making. And I think Commissioner Gruhl asked for more detail on the reports that you were looking at to inform those decisions, because they're obviously impacting not just our staff, but also the people who are doing the work on the streets. I'm trying to understand what, and I didn't receive reports from you with detail of that. That was requested at the last meeting. But I'm trying to understand for this operational stability portion of what you're working on, what are the managerial accounting reports that you're looking at so you can understand the financial health of LAHSA, on a regular basis? And do you have confidence in those reports as you're making cuts and trying to adjust our allocations to staff, how we service the tens of thousands of people who are under our care? What are those financial reports that you're looking at that are informing you? Because I haven't seen something like that provided to me to be able to understand the financial health of LAHSA. And I'm trying to understand what information you're using to guide that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have monthly financial reports that are on our website. They're hard to find, so I'm going to make them more transparent. But for the operational report that we're doing, there are things that were pretty obvious that you could cut to save money in this financial crisis. It wasn't rocket science to look at that we don't need a lot of the cars that we were using, that we have a really large lease in several areas. There were things that I would say in some ways are low-hanging fruit, not a responsibility or, an issue from the past administration, but in these times, I think if we save money that we do not need to spend, it naturally will hopefully go back into our budget and help save jobs, help all of that to get money onto the street. That's what we're looking at. And I think our report next month will lay that out a little bit more, and we can maybe provide you some also financial reports within that report, if that's helpful. We can talk about that, what you'd like to see in that.
I mean, I think, thank you. And I don't doubt that there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. And I think that's a great place to start. But I'm trying to understand, so what I understand is we don't produce monthly income statements and balance sheets, cash flow statements in a way that are easy to understand. And is that what you're looking at when you're looking at the decision-making?
Yes, and I think Janine.
You're looking at those. Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
and I think Janine can explain those reports.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
Janine Trejo, CFO. We have provided presentations to the Finance Committee which Commissioner Slazo was present on. And that does go over the budget versus actuals, which when you look at government reporting and you look at government reporting from the city of LA, from Glendale, from Long Beach, which are the other COCs, even Pasadena, our reports are very similar to their reports. This gives the budget versus actuals. It identifies the funding source. It identifies where you're burning hot, where you're underspending, and those are conversations that we then have with the Finance Committee. The general ledgers are also provided. And then we go over the budget versus actuals with the CEO, and we drill down in areas so that this way she can see the cost of the rent, the vehicles, the insurance, and then make decisions in those areas.
The government, I mean, thank you. The government reporting is different than kind of managerial reporting and understanding kind of the monthly, kind of what's changing and where things are, where money's coming in and where it's coming out. And I understand we don't produce monthly balance sheets and income statements, and we don't reconcile monthly against our bank accounts. Is that correct?
No, we do reconcile monthly against our bank accounts because we do provide the reconciled monthly bank statements. We have to provide those to our funders. So those go to DPSS quarterly with every single reconciled bank account. And we do review the cash flow. That is part of the aging payables and receivables. And we then make payments to our service providers based off of their aging payables and the receivables that are coming in. So it is different, and we did provide a presentation, and happy to reshare that, that explains how for-profit reporting is different from governmental accounting reporting. And so there are differences there in the information that is going to be shared, and we do provide that during the commission. But, we do drill down when we have discussions with the CEO in the department budgets, as well as the particular departments receiving their spend down analysis on each one of their lines in the general ledger for them to understand by department where they have underspend, where they're overspending. And those particular budgets are approved by the commission. And that was approved by commission in July.
I understand. So we reconcile, but we don't produce balance sheets and income statements on a monthly basis. Is that correct?
We do not provide and we do not produce the balance statements. That does not mean that we do not have the information and conduct analysis.
I understand. It's just hard. The reason those are produced is because they're easy to understand for people who can look at things. They can kind of quickly get up to speed and understand what's happening inside of an organization. But I appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Any other questions on this robust report? Okay, thank you, Geeta. Let's move on to consent calendar, item 5.1. Do we have, well, we don't have recusals on any of these. There's no way we can. So first we have item 5.1 on the table.
Yes.
Please, thank you.
Janine Lim, Deputy CFO.
Are we going to lump these all together since there's no reason not to, or are you going to walk them through?
Yeah,
them?
these went to program.
Thank you.
committee.
Okay, thank you.
So I don't, if we don't have any I mean, we might have questions, so I'm not saying
Yeah.
not, but if we don't, we can move approval. Is correct on that? It is.
Okay.
Sorry, I couldn't hear what she said.
Oh, they were approved in committee,
They were approved in committee.
but revised since?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, sorry, when you say you're going to lump them together, you're going to lump together just everything on 5.1, or you're going to lump together all items in 5 together?
All the
think-
consent items.
So
Okay,
5.1,
5.1.
5.
Yeah, so, but it sounds like we can't do that because there's changes, so.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Janine Lim, Deputy CFO. Item number 5.1 on your agenda this morning is requesting the committee's approval to enter into a fiscal year 25-26 funder agreement with the Los Angeles County Development Authority. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on this?
I move approval on 5.1.
Second.
Commissioner Sheik,
Yes.
Commissioner Graves,
Yes.
Commissioner Gruhl,
Aye.
Commissioner Perkins.
Yes.
Commissioner Slaza.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Now let's move to 5.2.
Thank you. Number 5.2 on your agenda is requesting committee's approval to enter into agreements and amendments with providers and vendors for fiscal year 25-26. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any changes from what we approved in programs?
5.2. Yep.
I've got some questions.
Go
Yeah.
ahead,
Okay.
I go?
Commissioner
Okay,
Slater.
thank you very much. Just want to ask to start with on the housing operations and management line item that I see that it says that on the materials provided that it supports a time limited subsidy programs with 42 slots. So is that 26 million going to 42 slots? As it says here?
I don't have the printout right in front of me. If someone can call out the,
I mean, it's on page 14. I can give it to you. I'll just give it to you.
For the home contract. Okay, so what was your question on the 42?
My question is that 26 million that's associated with those 42 slots only? It says it says this is a $26 million in funding that supports time limited subsidy programs with 42 slots. I just want to understand if that's 26 million is devoted to 42 spots.
I am turning it over to Abigail Prof from Funding and Allocations.
Thank you.
Good morning. No, that is not 42 slots. That should actually be,
You put the microphone
Yeah, please. Yeah.
I'm so
Introduce
sorry.
yourself, yeah.
Thank you. My name is Abigail Prof, Director of Funding Allocations at LASA, and our sincerest apologies about that typo on that portion. It is not 42 slots going to $26 million. That should be actually roughly 1,425 slots.
Yeah, I had a feeling that was a little bit off when I looked at that. And I just, it's disappointing to me to see a mistake like that in a presentation that we have to approve for $26 million to have it off like that.
Understood. Thank you.
Saying it's, and then I have another question on the
Can
special.
I interrupt you just quickly to make a very random announcement that has nothing to do with this? There is a black Cherokee SUV in front of our commission room that is about to be towed in case that is someone's car. Got it. We'll go back to this so that that person can get up without shame too. Thank you. Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt,
No, no
but
worries.
seemed
I'm
relevant.
glad, no, that's good move.
Somebody go save their-
And the question on the item for special services for groups, I see that this is a $21 million allocation for Bridge Home Figueroa, which is ABH Figueroa and SPA 6. Could you explain some detail around that? I think the Bridge Home, the ABH Fig is a 15 family unit spot. I'm just trying to understand how that funding is tied to that number of, I mean, how the $21 million is tied to a Bridge Home Figueroa.
Thank you. From what I understand from looking at this, because I apologize, I don't have the further details on this. This contract includes not only the family units as part of that contract and the leasing costs, but also the motel vouchers that are being added to be able to support SPA 6. I can-
20 motel rooms that SSG has, is that right?
I'm not sure if it's 20. I can double check and provide that information for the number of motel vouchers that were also inclusive of this, because I know it's a combination of the units as well as those.
Okay, so then what's here on here is inaccurate then?
Just to make sure I'm referring correctly, that is CHCH027, I believe. For
That's right, yeah.
And in the description, it says funding for leasing motel vouchers and units for the site. So it may be that it was for the site and then motel vouchers overall, not motel vouchers for the site.
Okay, because it doesn't, the text here doesn't mention motel vouchers.
Oh, I see. I'm so sorry. I'm looking at the table itself rather than the note.
Okay, okay.
We'll make note of that. Thank you so much.
Okay, so it's motel, so then just to understand, the 21 million is for ABH Fig plus the motel vouchers for SSG, is that correct?
Yes,
And that's it?
I can double check, but that is my understanding.
Okay. And I have a question on the Weingart Center, that the $24 million that are associated with that. That's for, just want to understand the cost per slot. So it's 616 slots. That's associated with the Mayfair, which is at West 7th Street, correct?
This is under our Mayfair agreement.
That's right. And there's 616 slots at the Mayfair?
That should be 308.
Yeah, there's 294 beds at the Mayfair, right? Okay, so the cost per slot there, if it's 616, would be 3,294 cost per slot. So it's actually, there's only 294 there. So that's not accurate either.
Thank you for bringing that up. We will
Yeah,
make-
you're welcome. Thanks. That's all I have.
I have a question on page 16, where I see that there are contracts that were executed with county general funds. Why are those only executed now? Did you just get the money, or why weren't they executed sooner?
I will have to look exactly into these specific contracts to give you a reason, but I'll make note.
Okay, so, and after what Commissioner Salza was saying, please come with every piece of information and backup for future commission meetings because it is difficult. We're only here once a month. And we went all, and now you're going to have to email us. And if you don't, we're going to email you and then it's not public. So please just bring everything. Bring all your files, all your computers. We got to be able to ask all the questions.
I mean, this is millions of dollars that we're allocating and this stuff is, this what we're represented here is not accurate.
I think as well, including if there are changes specifically to identify from committee to this, and that comparison. But the question that you just asked, Amy, I don't know, by the end of the commission, maybe we can have the answer to that?
Sure. And specifically, you're speaking of the two.
I want to know why a county contract took this long to execute.
Okay. Understood.
Are we going to vote on this item? Or wait until our questions are answered? That being said, I also don't want to, I don't want, can we revisit it in this meeting later in the meeting?
It has, if the documents aren't accurate, we can't vote on them.
I can vote no.
That's what we'd have to do.
Well, the question is, I think we want to get the money out if we
Correct.
can. Is there a possibility, and it's 10 o'clock, I'm sure we'll be here for another hour
To get the answers.
get the very clear in a document that outlines the numbers that they have talked about. And if we don't do it, what's the ramifications of not acting today on the items that we have?
Yeah, we want to act today. I'm trying to think if we get you a new report, can we submit that though because of the Brown Act issues?
It's a factual
It's-
Yeah,
document.
it's just
of
changing
the accuracy of the document.
Yeah, okay, we will post it. So we will hand
Okay.
out a post. So we will go back and amend this document before the meeting is over.
So I will move, we will revisit item
Yeah.
5.2 later in the meeting.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Going on to 5.3, I know we have a presentation on this. There's no presentation? Got it. Thank you. Okay.
So I think in the future, for those that are changed, should maybe be highlighted in the beginning to say these consent items will not be consent because we're changing them.
And you can vote on it. You can vote.
Okay. So on 5.3, do we have a vote on that?
I would move approval on item 5.3.
Oh, a second.
Commissioner Sheik,
Aye.
Commissioner Gruhl,
Aye.
Commissioner Perkins.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Graves.
Yes.
Commissioner Slaza,
Yes.
the motion passes unanimously.
Let's move on to item 5.4. Do I have a motion to pass that?
Yes.
A
I'd like to
second.
move to pass that.
Commissioner Sheik,
Aye.
Commissioner Graves,
Aye.
Commissioner Gruhl,
Aye.
Commissioner Perkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Slaza.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to update on new county department. We have Liz here, but I don't know if Sarah, you're giving it because you're here. Or if there'll be a tag team.
Got my phone
Okay.
a friend, Sarah Mahan. I'm again, the Director of the Department of Homeless Services and Housing. Thank you for having us here today to be able to give an update on HSH. As the commission knows, beginning in early August, county staff started working with LAHSA to carefully review all county-funded LAHSA programs with the goal of finalizing which programs and funding will be moving to the county. This process involved gathering information from LAHSA to determine whether there are any potential unintended consequences of shifting specific funding or programs back to the county. Such unintended consequences could include loss of capacity because of shifting funds or other administrative burdens or challenges that would be difficult to remedy. County and LAHSA staff met numerous times to discuss each program area and to review the data. We're grateful for LAHSA's support throughout this process, and we want to acknowledge how challenging it is. And so we're for LAHSA staff to participate in this and just how grateful we are for their work and support. Earlier this week, we shared with LASA leadership, with the board offices, and with the City of LA the results of this process. Based on our analysis, we have determined that all county funds currently supporting programs at LASA will shift to HSH in FY 26-27, with the exception of those that are directly tied to LASA's role as the region's continuum of care. While there are some programs where extra care will be needed as we unbraid the funds to ensure there are no unintended consequences, ultimately, we determine that in keeping with the board's direction, these funds will shift to the new department. It is important to note that while the funding supporting these programs will shift to the new department, how those funds will be used has not been determined. That will be determined as part of the spending plan process that is now underway. Programs related to the coordinated entry system and unit acquisition, including master leasing and RPSS, may be on slightly different timelines and will be than other programs given some of the complexities with those. So in the coming weeks, we'll be digging in with LASA staff to determine feasible timelines for those programs to ensure minimal disruption for providers and for participants. Our next steps are now that we have made these decisions, are to turn our attention to the logistics of this transition, which we'll be doing and working really closely with LASA staff through that process over the coming 8 months. I'll move now to the spending plan process. As you know, we are currently working on building out the FY 26-27 spending plan in the context of a very difficult fiscal environment, which requires us to cut our budget by about 1/3 or $300 million. To develop recommendations to the board, our team created a rubric in consultation with the board offices, with community members, and with other stakeholders. The rubric has been applied to existing funded programs as part of our phase 1 of the spending plan process, which has allowed us to identify some initial curtailment recommendations. We've presented these outcomes this week at the leadership table, yesterday at the Homeless Policy Deputies meeting, and they've been posted online, including a recording on the HI website. This first round, which was really painful, only resulted in $33 million in reductions, and in phase 2, we have 270 more million to go. HSH hiring. I'm pleased to share that we have started recruiting for critical administrative leadership positions, as well as some operations and program leadership positions at HSH. As I mentioned last time, recruitment bulletins for these positions have been and will continue to be posted on our project website, ceo.lacounty.gov/DH. As I noted, we have finalized our evaluation of LASA funding and associated program that will transition to HSH. As we move forward towards finalizing the spending plan recommendations, we're going to have a clearer sense of the associated workforce needs for HSH and additional opportunities within HSH for LASA employees. We also have really, because of the fiscal situation and wanting to ensure that we have as many opportunities for LASA staff to be considered, we are really minimizing any hiring we're doing on vacant positions at HI and Housing for Health as well. So I just want to note that publicly, but that's an internal process that we've put in place.
Can I just, I'm sorry to interrupt. So LASA staff will be prioritized?
LASA's, there's, it's not prioritized in that way. We have a 1304 process that the county enables us to do expedited hiring. And in all of our bulletins, we're prioritizing people who have experience working in homeless services. So LASA staff have a advantage in that way.
Do you have an estimated number of how
No.
much staff you will need?
No, not at this time. And again, we're going through the spending plan process and identifying curtailments. So we'll have a better sense of additional staffing we'll be able to add as that happens. But we are hiring now on administrative positions, and those again are being publicly posted, so LASA staff have awareness of those. As I heard Geeta mention in her director's report, or CEO report, I guess it is, the county has been meeting with LASA, with LASA's HR department and HR to HR engagement. The focus is to provide project updates and to keep HR informed of major developments such as the current and upcoming recruitment bulletins. Additionally, the CEO implementation team who's supporting me in standing up the new department and the county's Department of Human Resources have been meeting with SEIU 721 for the purpose of providing project updates, and they will continue to do so throughout the transition. We're eager, again, as Geeta mentioned, to have further engagement with LASA staff, and we're grateful for Geeta's leadership in this area. Changewell, the organization that's working with us on all of our community engagement and change management efforts, is working with Keisha to schedule engagement sessions with LASA staff for November. We recognize and appreciate the expertise and the skills and knowledge that LASA staff possess and the incredibly hard work that they do on behalf of people who are experiencing homelessness in the county. And we want to ensure that the work that LASA staff are doing, that they know that it's appreciated and critical, and that they have the most up-to-date information about what's going on, about job opportunities at HSH, and that they're part of the process of developing HSH as critical subject matter experts and community members. Finally, I want to just recognize that on October 15th, the CEO implementation team presented a comprehensive board letter to the operations cluster at the Board of Supervisors. This board letter will establish the new department and its key authorities. After some relatively minor edits, the letter will now move forward to the Board of Supervisors, which they will hear on November 4th board meeting. The board letter includes 15 recommendations, including one that would delegate authority to county council to work with the city attorney to amend the JPA to permit LASA to hire its own counsel and to update notice requirements that are outdated. The justification for this was to ensure that county council has sufficient capacity to meet the needs. I also understand that this has been an ongoing discussion between LASA leadership and commission with council over the past couple of years as well. So I just wanted to acknowledge that in a public setting. Happy to take any questions.
Some questions, please. A couple questions. On the master leasing RPS, you said the timing might be different. Is that meaning sooner or after the June?
Later.
Later. Okay, so not an expedited part of that. And then on the issue relative to the staffing, I mean, I think, this is when you think about it, I know when the discussion happened on the county Board of Supervisors, there was a lot of questions being asked by some of the supervisors relative to the LASA staff and what that would mean. And I think there was, rightly or wrongly, an impression given that LASA would have some form of a priority. And I think that is a anticipation or expectation of that. And so as you're going forward and you're considering, I think that's something that there is some expectation by staff and others that during that process. Similarly, and this would just be a question on a report back, is the fact that as you are hiring, let's just say I'm a LASA employee and I dedicated to LASA. I want to make sure there's no gap in services, no gap in programs, because we'll be still doing things until July or June 30th. And so there's going to be a need for staffing. At the same time, there's a job opening over at the county that is a position that I will have after June 30th. And in the interim, we are having to do our programs. So I say that in a way in which we're looking at almost on a weekly basis as to how that is going to impact us and how we are certain, as Geeta is running this organization and others, and people are making tough personal decisions on that. I just want to highlight that because I'm concerned that all of a sudden, and again, I want them to be eligible for those positions. I also don't want anything to fall through the cracks. And so as it's implementation, I don't know. Did you have a question for Amy?
No, she's agreeing with you.
Okay.
Concerns. Oh, about concerns.
I mean, I agree it's going to have a cost, but every person who is eligible for those positions should be entirely supported to apply for those.
And I'm not saying they shouldn't. What I'm saying is, how do we deal with that impact is what I'm saying, is how do we deal with that impact? Because if I have I want to be able to do that. So I just think we have to be cognizant of, if we had 100 people leave next week because they've applied for these positions and you gave them to, again, I'm just throwing out numbers, that will impact the current services that we are doing, and so that we be cognizant on a very regular basis. And I know you're all having that communication. I'm just saying this because I feel it as well on that. On the last one, on the JPA thing that you mentioned, it was kind of a surprise because we do have the authority now to be able to ask the county and the city to have outside counsel if we wanted to, and that's something we would on that basis. But it was the opening of JPA, and it wasn't something that we asked for, the city asked for. So I'm sure there will be some conversations between now and then, but it was kind of a jump to something that we weren't necessarily a request by the client.
Yeah, and I'll admit I was surprised when I saw it as well. And so I inquired further. And I re-looked at the JPA, and the JPA currently is limited to conflict counsel. And my understanding is that there have been ongoing conversations between county counsel and city attorney around this. So.
Yeah, and I raised that as a future agenda item at our last meeting to bring up a discussion of looking at evaluating our legal counsel that we receive here, understanding how conflicts work, understanding how that works in within the kind of four corners of the JPA. I personally think there's room in what we have already in place to be able to navigate this better than we have in the past. And I'm not sure, I mean, in my personal view, I'm not sure we have to open up the JPA to kind of look at this. I'm not sure that's a right use of resources at this time. But I do hope that we can, it's not on the agenda for today. I'm going to ask that it be put on a future agenda to look at our legal function here and understand who does what and what the conflicts are. And what the best counsel is to help LAHSA achieve its mission. So I appreciate you raising that, and I'm not sure where that language came from.
I think the other part of that is it is, let's just say we wanted counsel differently today. Opening the JPA is a longer process, which could be 9 months from now versus we believe we need something now to do that. So I know you are the messenger and not that, but we've kind of tried to ask like where it's coming from and where that is relative to open the JPA versus a specific item relative to it's either conflict or otherwise. So again, we can get some advice from the council, but I also appreciate that you brought that up today.
Yeah, and I will again say.
And that's on the November 4th?
November 4th. And again, I just want to reiterate that the recommendation is limited to delegating authority to county council only specific to that provision. It is not open up authority for county council to amend any other component of the JPA.
But we could do all of this without amending the JPA.
That I do not believe that that's council's interpretation, but.
Okay, seems to be different opinion on that, but yes, thank you.
Also, this was, it was updated in the board letter. You said that, right? So it's not going to happen until July anyway.
Correct. It was what was updated in the board letter made it so that it was no sooner than, no earlier effective date than July 1st, 2026.
That was going to be my question because I know we chatted about that. So
It's
this
in there.
this recommendation to open the JPA is not till the end of this fiscal year.
Correct.
So
It wouldn't deal if there was a problem today, I guess.
it wouldn't help us anyway right now.
But also, in a little bit of a disagreement, my understanding is county council was talking, like you kind of referenced this, county council has been talking with city attorney. The city didn't read this and never had heard of it.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, I believe there had been, but I have not heard anything the city attorney say, yes, I want to do this. And we, as a city attorney, again, they are the two entities that can open the JPA. The services that are being provided and the client are here, LAHSA and this commission as well as that. So that part of it, it's unusual to have that the client says, I want you to do something separately. So that's why we're trying to figure out what the reason was. And I think what I heard you say they shared was the resources related to that.
It's resources, and I also understand that it has been a request from LAHSA leadership and from members of the commission over the last couple of years
I don't recall that at all.
So
to get outside counsel.
when appropriate, but not to open the JPA and say we want to do that. So there'd been some, again, we could go into, but again, you're the messenger. So, but there has not been a adopted commission action on that,
Sure.
or the staff specifically saying this is what we want to have tomorrow. So again, you're the messenger, so but reporting back.
So we're going to have attorneys come and tell us about this, or this is a closed session item? I mean, I think there's obviously disagreement, so we should have the people who know come and talk to us about it.
I think that sounds good. And I just want to your point though, I want to acknowledge your previous point. And I know the JPA is a hot button issue. And I have spoken to it as much as I can. I just want to go back to your point though about the staff and during the transition. And it is, this is a very tough like needle to thread. And I'll just assure you that we are ensuring that any LAHSA staff that are applying, or anyone who has history of working at LAHSA that are applying, because there have been some that have been laid off recently, that they are being identified and flagged as such when we're getting lists of candidates, so that we can ensure that they are being considered and appropriately interviewed and prioritized in that process. And we will, this is why we have HR to HR, so that we can be working through the workforce pieces. And Geeta and I, with Cherie and Rachel, with our sort of chiefs, are meeting weekly to be talking around all things, including the transition, and workforce capacity is certainly a key part of that. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions?
I guess one last question, because I know the recommendations or the moves on, what will go to what department and stay where have been announced this week. What is the timeline for us to provide feedback before that goes to the County Board of Supervisors?
The spending plan process?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's all on the website,
Yep.
on the HI website. The next phase, so we've completed phase one.
Yep.
We are moving on to phase two right now, where we're identifying where the second round of cuts, which will have to equal 270 million, will come from. Once we have completed that, we will be hosting a town hall. It will be on November 14th. We've changed our format from just like a briefing to town hall format, so that could be didactic and we can get feedback from the community. So that is the next best place to come and get updates and to provide feedback.
Just because you're here, the 273 million for the general public, like, why is that being cut?
Yeah, it's 303 million.
Yep.
And it is a result of a few things. So one is it's a result of Measure A is a tax revenue. It's a sales tax revenue.
So not cut. Sorry, I heard, Amy, like why the shortfall as compared to the expectation? Sorry.
That's our deficit, which will result in cuts, and very unfortunate cuts.
Yes.
So one is that Measure A is a sales tax revenue because of the economy and actions like immigration raids that have really negatively impacted our economy. We're collecting less sales tax, so we're bringing in less revenue than we previously have. The second piece I just want to call out is Measure A was a larger sales tax from a 1/4 cent to a 1/2 cent, but not all that funding comes to the county. A really large share of it goes to La Casa to support housing production and preservation, as well as homelessness prevention. And then there's a large amount, almost 100 million, that goes directly to local jurisdictions, to cities and to COGS, and they determine how that funding is used. So in terms of the Measure A, that's what's that piece. The other piece is that the county has been using one-time and various state and federal funding sources to supplement our spending plan. And those funding sources have been cut, or one-time funding has been exhausted. And so we're now at the point where we have to deal with that and don't have the funds available to sustain the level of programming.
I appreciate going through that. I know most of the commission is aware of that, but I feel like it is still a mystery to the general public on why the math isn't mathing, but it's very clear why. And I do wish as a system we were able to explain this to folks more and more. So thank you. Thank you for going over that.
Thank
It's
you
an
for giving me the
educational
opportunity.
component.
Sarah, how could we make sure, because the slides that you presented at deputies yesterday explain this really beautifully so people can understand it, how could we make sure people...
It's on the HI website, and I'm
Yeah.
doing a recording of the same presentation I did yesterday this afternoon that will be posted online.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Can you
'cause
share that website actually? Because people should go visit. It's actually got a lot of really updated information.
Yes, sure, happy to.
Say it.
It's the HI website. Do you know what the website is for the spending plan?
homeless.lacounty.gov, I'm guessing.
.gov.
Thank you. Okay, how many online speakers do we have? 3. Do we have any other questions before we go to online speakers? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have the closed captions now too.
What did you say? Closed captions.
Heather Varden, you're welcome to speak. Please unmute yourself.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Heather Varden. I'm an SEIU 721 member and LASA employee and part of the SEIU Regional Council. I want to speak on the lack of transparency in the transition from LASA to the new County Department of Homelessness and Housing Services. When the Board of Supervisors voted to create this department on April 1st, there was never a written promise that staff would transition, but there was an illusion that if we kept doing our best work, we would continue our careers in homeless services. Many of us believed that because we've dedicated years to serving our unhoused neighbors and strengthening LA County's response. Now we've learned these emergency appointments will be open to everyone, not a true transition for existing staff. That means hundreds of skilled, compassionate workers will be displaced. People who've been out in encampments, in shelters, in crisis after crisis. We're not just stakeholders, we are the staff. We're the ones delivering the services, building trust, and driving the outcomes that finally started to reduce homelessness this year. To ignore that is to risk losing the heart and experience that make the system work. We need transparency, respect, and real transition plan that honors the people behind the progress. Thank you.
Mitchell Quintanilla, you're welcome to speak. Please unmute yourself.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Mitchell, and I'm speaking on behalf of LASA employees represented by SEIU 721. The loss of these employees is more than just a stakeholder issue. They are the frontline staff dedicated to the hard work, grinding every day to end homelessness in Los Angeles. These are the people with the rapport, lived experience, and the knowledge that keeps support systems running. Many of us were told there would be a transition into the new county department, but instead we're being asked to reapply alongside the general public for emergency appointments. That is a broken promise and a missed opportunity to retain experienced and committed staff and prevent institutional knowledge loss. I'm asking the Commission to advocate for a real transition plan, one that prioritizes existing workforce rather than replacing it, because the continuity of staff means continuity of the care for the people we serve and the strengthening of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Liz Palomino, you're welcome to speak. Please unmute yourself.
My name is Liz Palomino. I am a proud constituent of SD3, a LASA employee and a member of SEIU 721. Recently, our members were informed that the county will not be transitioning any current LASA employees into the new homelessness department, and none of those positions will be set aside for existing staff. This directly contradicts months of communication to staff and undermines the motion that was passed on April 1st, which includes the intent to transition LASA employees into the new department. Your colleagues on the board have the power to change course and ensure that unionized workers who have sustained these programs are not left behind. Failing to do so would send a troubling message that the county is acting in an anti-union manner. We urge this commission to stand with us and call on the board to uphold its commitments by providing clear assurances that these dedicated workers will have a place in the new department. Thank you for your time.
EA, you're welcome to speak. Please unmute yourself.
Hello, my name is E. Abdelghani. I am a represented staff at LASA. I've been working with LASA since 2020. I wanted to speak in the own words of the county. In the motion that has directed this transition, it does state explicitly in section 4 that LASA employees to continue county employment, as well as a process to track and prioritize these employees. We were said, not only in verbal conversations, but in writing, in your own writing, that we will be prioritized. I expect the transition team to honor the agreement set forth in this motion, as well as in section 7B, that there will be associated staff to be transitioned by July 1st of 2026. Measure A also calls out that the transition to Measure A will not result in displacement of public employees.
Thank you.
We have no more members of the public who wish to speak on this item.
Thank you. At this point, I see Matt Sabo came in. Can we have an update from the City Chief Administrative Office? Please join us. Thank you.
Okay, good morning. Members of the commission, Matt Zabo, City Administrative Officer. I'll just say a few things and then we'll open it up for questions. As I don't have a formal presentation and it's a little early to, as it relates to the city process to provide that. But I want to give you actually a very brief update as to where we are in the Alliance case, because that is relevant to some of the things that we've been talking about and our ability to comply with that. And then I'm going to say a few other things as well related to our workings recently with LAHSA and LAHSA staff, which we very much appreciate. So as many of you know, the obligation for the city is to establish 12,915 units of housing by June of 2027. It was a 5-year agreement on the city side. We entered into it in June of 2022. And we provide quarterly reports to the court as to our progress. We report which beds are open and occupiable and which beds are in process. Our latest report as of September 30th, 2025, we reported that of the 12,915 beds, 8,104 beds were open and another 5,015 beds are in process. That totals to 13,119, which is where we want to be, meaning that our current plans plus the beds that are already open put us on track to comply with the obligation. And we certainly want to overshoot that obligation because we know what happens. Sometimes housing is delayed, et cetera. Of the housing that is open, I will say this is the investment represents the city and county's commitment to permanent housing. Of the beds that are open, 6,341 are permanent supportive housing of some kind, and then another 1,763 are interim housing. That does include about 1,100 of those beds from the Mayor's Inside Safe program. So we are able to count the hotel and motel leases for that program as interim housing compliant with the settlement. So it is heavily weighted towards permanent housing. Of the 5,015 beds that are in progress, we have a similar split between permanent supportive housing and interim housing of projects and beds that are in process. However, we do have plans and we have reported for the first time that we intend to comply ultimately with the obligation by utilizing 2,000 TLS slots, time limited subsidy slots. And so as we're contemplating the next steps with the county withdrawal and what LAHSA looks like in the coming years, we're about to begin our budget process at the city, and we'll for the first time contemplate what LAHSA looks like financially. It is absolutely critical that we're able to maintain a seamless transition on the time limited subsidy front, particularly as we are, I don't know if the technical term is debraiding or unbraiding the funding sources which we have used to this point, together with the county and other sources from LAHSA. I also want to just take a moment to talk about the city's relationship with LAHSA, which has many fronts. But LAHSA has been extraordinarily helpful to the city recently as it relates to our efforts to have a better sense of and to make available better data about the city's investments on our homelessness strategy. We have a committee, the Homelessness Strategy Committee, which I chair along with the chair of the Homelessness, Housing and Homelessness Committee, the CLA and the mayor's office. And we've been looking at data every month on the impact of the city's investments in our regional homelessness response. This is also part of the work that we will be building out in the housing department with the Bureau of Homelessness Oversight. That is in its initial phases. It was authorized in the last budget, but we are currently building that out. The data that we've been reviewing is really what our city leadership needs to manage and approach our investments. So, for example, with our partnership with LAHSA staff, we now have insight into how many people city-funded outreach teams have helped come inside on a month-to-month basis. We have insight into how many city-funded interim housing is currently providing shelter, or we have insight that city-funded interim housing is providing shelter to about 6,400 people, and more than 90% of the beds are full on any given night. And we have been steadily increasing the percentage of new permanent supportive housing projects that are leasing up to 90% within 90 days, which is the goal. We're making this data public every month for transparency and also for the benefit of our partners. But there's still many parts of how the system is operating that we do not have visibility into, including things like the quality of case management that people in time-limited subsidy slots and permanent supportive housing are receiving, the number of people in city-funded shelters who are receiving ongoing on-site behavioral health or medical care through the county. For example, we're seeing places in the system where outcomes are not good enough, where people are struggling to retain housing, and where case management or intensive case care could make a difference. So knowing if that care is happening, or if we as a region need to advocate for more resources so that that care can happen, needs to be a next step in our partnership. So again, we're grateful that the county is now committed to making more of that information available through the Executive Committee for Regional Homelessness Alignment. And so particularly considering the significant reduction in available funding over the coming year, we really need to share regional data on how our current investments are working in order to determine how we should and what we should be funding moving forward. We are in the position, whether we like it or not, that we need to make choices. We cannot continue to do everything that we've been doing and do all the things that we believe that we need to do. And so we shouldn't make that decision. We couldn't make that decision without clear insight into the outcomes, and that is provided through transparency and data. So we really appreciate the work that's been happening thus far, but it is absolutely critical as we are about to engage in decisions on funding reductions in particular. I'll stop there and open it for questions as you wish.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Nice to see you too, Matt. Thank you for coming to LAHSA. It's kind of like when election seasons with president candidates, we have to give equal time. So county and now city, but appreciate that. I think it's important for people to remember why LAHSA was formed. Can you just give a brief description?
A brief description on the history of LAHSA. That I did not prepare a diagram as to how that started.
I'm talking about the lawsuit.
Yeah. So look, it's what you're getting at is it's about trying to institutionalize a partnership and a shared commitment and shared responsibility between the city and the county on a problem that is not only impossible to solve without that partnership, it is inherently necessary that partnership be maintained. And while there, this is always going to be an imperfect science. We're talking about housing human beings. We're not talking about building sidewalks or fixing potholes, which is a lot easier to plan for and to execute. And it isn't perfect. I don't think it will ever be perfect. And as we are contemplating our next steps, particularly as the county has made the decisions that it has made, I am concerned, and I do believe it is critical that we institutionalize a partnership between the city and the county to continue the work and the progress that we've made.
Great. Thank you very much.
So we had a presentation before we came about the county's kind of fiscal situation and the challenges, and it's been clear, the Measure A money that was expected in the revenues just has been different, and city obviously has some of the same fiscal challenges and the decision making. And I know that there's been a lot of motions about what that might look like in the department, and maybe you could just give us two questions I have. One is kind of fiscal situation and how that might impact homelessness. Again, I know this is thinking in the future, and two, what's the next steps in the process of consideration? Because you don't have any council action yet or anything on where it's going forward, but just maybe those two would be great.
Okay, so first question related to our general fiscal condition on the city's homelessness side. I mean, the overall, but homelessness. And then the second question is related to the next steps as it relates to the county establishing.
City and LAHSA. I mean, city and LAHSA, because there's been conversations about how that will work, or how that even the county, I know the county's asked potentially for some of the money to go to some of the city money to go directly to the county. Again, I know that is all being considered, but maybe just the process timelining.
Sure. So as it relates to city money, and I'll start with that. It's important to remember and to focus on what we're actually talking about when we say city money. The city receives, thanks to Measure A, there's a local solutions fund that will provide about $54 million to the city, and that's those are flexible dollars, and those are appreciated and those are needed. We receive money from the state through the HAP program, which has been, since its inception, a renewed one-time program, and it is always and continually is at risk. And we now know that it certainly was cut in half in this last budget, and that is a source of funds that is also relatively flexible. That between those two, that is the lifeline for interim housing services. We know everyone here is familiar with Measure A, and there are significant dollars that should flow to the city through La Casa, through the housing side of Measure A. But the challenge there is that it's the color of money, and we can't use money from the La Casa side for sustaining services. In fact, there's a general prohibition against using it for homeless services or homeless individuals, and we believe we've carved out an exception for some of the funds to be used for time-limited subsidies, and that's absolutely critical. Beyond that, it's the city's general fund. So when we're talking about, well, all the money that the city is getting from Measure A, on the housing side, it's extremely limited and restricted. On the services side, it is compared to the need, it is a fraction of what's required to sustain what it is that we're paying for now. So we are in as severe of a financial situation. The reason I spent the time talking about the data is that we are in that same situation. We have gaps in the hundreds of millions of dollars if we assume that we're going to not only comply with and expand our housing as is required by the lawsuit, but is also required by the need on the street, and at the same time keep doing everything that we're doing. There's not new money here, as we know. I'm sure I wasn't able to hear the presentation from the county, but we've had multiple conversations about the dollars that are allocated for the services side reducing, even for the county, which is getting the vast majority of those dollars. So we have hard decisions moving forward. The second question, the chief legislative analyst and my office are currently reviewing options as to how we would move forward. And ultimately, it comes down to what makes the most sense in terms of administering the contracts that are delivering the services. That's our principal concern. And we're looking at all options. There has not been any, certainly no decisions made on that front, and there hasn't been any informed deliberation by the city council. We will have a report forthcoming that will lay out the situation as we see it. We've been working with the county very closely to better understand what it is that their move over the course of this year, and how that move will impact LAHSA and what LAHSA can do. We'll provide the report and we'll provide options, and we'll go from there. That conversation will happen in the coming weeks.
Thank you so much, Matt. It is really incredible to have you here and get to ask questions because we talk about the city a lot. So it's so nice having you here. I also want to commend, I think you are personally responsible for a lot of the incredible engagement that's happening between the city and the county. And so I'm really happy that you're in the position you're in. A couple of very specific questions that I fear you may not have the details of, but I just want to elevate. One is, we were talking earlier about the fact that if LAHSA doesn't get their HAP 6 allocation, that they'll be unable to cover Q3, which is $17 million. The county has said they haven't made a commitment to pay their half of that. There was question here if the city is able to front $8.5 million for Q3 to cover LAHSA's HAP. It's a big question, but there was a lot of conversation, like we're all waiting for Matt to come to ask him.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we've had this conversation for the last several months. I believe that we had an understanding about how we would manage. Neither the city, and not to speak for the county, but as my understanding of the county, we're not in a position. There's not a lot of extra money. There is no extra money laying around. What the city has done is identify. Again, this is not an expenditure. This is a cash flow loan, basically. And so we've identified sources of funds that could be temporarily borrowed, so that we can provide our part of the commitment. So I see this as a problem that is solvable. It is not something that should be relied on an ongoing basis. We need to figure out how to avoid the situation, but for the purposes of not needing to pull back on services due to cash flow, there are ways that we can work that out, and we can continue to work with the county on that for Q3.
Okay. There's something else that keeps coming up in calls that I'm on, so it's great just to ask you directly about existing TLS slots that the city's paying for. I think it's about 300. There'll be ramp down happening for lots of TLS slots for both county and city funded, but there's some question about the ongoing source of funding from the city for those existing slots, that because we know you're going to have new TLS slots come July 1st and into the new fiscal year. Existing people in city-funded TLS, will they continue to be funded past June 30th?
I can't comment on that with specificity right here.
Okay.
We're looking at that, and I can't make that commitment right now.
Okay. Thank you. Another question that keeps coming up that we had a lot of transition age youth speak at homeless policy deputies yesterday, and they were asking about the city's HAP set aside for TAY. There is that specific set aside. I think the county has a little bit left in that pot. I didn't know if you're familiar with that stream. They were elevating that there hasn't been a lot of spend down from the city side.
So we are looking at ways to spend that out. There is a project in Hollywood on Melrose, right on Melrose, that will be a TAY exclusive project. It is a refurbished. It's an apartment building that will be available for interim housing for youth. That is in progress currently. That's being funded with the HAP funds.
Okay, awesome. That's good news. And then the last question I had was around the execution of the funding. I'm unclear when we hear a lot from providers about how much money from the city LAHSA currently has to pay providers. So we're hearing a lot that, and we had issues, we were talking about county money too, but for the city that programs that started July 1st, there's money that LAHSA doesn't yet have to pay the providers. So I'm curious how much LAHSA has received from the city, how much is still owed, and when the providers can start billing to the contracts for that work they're doing.
Yes, I don't have the numbers right in front of me. We are aware of that legitimate concern, and in fact, we are in constant motion to try to correct the things that we can correct on the city side, with all of the players on the city side that have to touch and approve those expenditures. I don't have the numbers for you, but we're aware of it, and we're working to address it.
I wonder, Janine, do you have numbers on how much money the LAHSA is owed so that providers, because we get calls about this every day, providers who can't pay their bills because they can't bill to the work that they're doing.
Janine Trejo, CFO. Apologies, I just came in, so I'm not going to have that information right now. I can get back to you.
So I guess the open-ended question, Janine, would be, or someone who can probably answer, and we could ask a provider, but are there many contracts that remain to be executed in that providers can't bill to them for work they've been doing since July?
Deputy CFO Janine Lim, yes, there are. We are currently at 57% executed with city contracts, so yes.
Okay. So typically then, so when LAHSA receives the money from the city or the county, how long does it typically take to execute the contracts? And maybe speak to some of the different contingencies, like the provider has to sign, so if you receive money from one of your funders, how quickly can that money be in the bank account of providers?
I would say the quickest could be 5 business days.
Okay.
That's the quickest. There are a lot of, there could be some contingencies in there, but
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
Any other
Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you. Any other questions for Matt? Or Janine? Other Janine?
Janine Trejo, CFO. I just want to note that there have been challenges within the department, within staffing. There is currently no director in the department. The associate directors are out. There's only one manager. There's issues within staffing and positions being filled, which is also part of the reason why we're doing the reorganization. So those are some of the challenges that we've been experiencing with contracts.
All right, but I think the question is, for a while there, we had contracts executed with the county and the city was a little bit behind. And so, but most of the contracts have been executed with the city for us to get the money. It's now in our hands. Is that correct? Okay. So I think that was there was some, challenges in the beginning, but I just want to make sure that I think there was a lot of push from everybody to say, make sure we get the money. So we have the money, so to speak, from the city, and now you're getting it out, so it's in our hands. Okay.
Okay, great.
Yeah, Matt, I just want to say thank you for being here today to shine some light on this. I guess, this has been something, whether the money kind of the timing of the money is one thing, but for months here, we've been talking about city agreements that were slow to be executed from our standpoint, which pushed things back. We were supposed to have 80% of our contracts executed on July 1st, I think. That was the target that Felicia had for us, and we're far behind that. We're not even there yet. Could you just provide some color on why those contracts from the city side, why it takes so long? Why it's that delay? Because it's caused a lot of downstream problems for us and for our service providers. I just want to understand the context, like what can we do better when this comes around next year to make sure that we have these things in place earlier? What's the holdup? What's the block? What can we do to help? Can we make things simpler? Can we give more notice? I'm just trying to understand. Thank you.
Yeah, there are multiple points through on the city process in order to get the approvals. Some take longer than others. We are identifying those areas where there can be improvement. It should not take that long. There are always reasons. We're trying to do is identify if there are systemic changes that can be made. There are always going to be reasons why there could be a delay on a particular contract, but we're looking at the system. I can't comment any further on that right now. I could just tell you that work is ongoing. It is a top priority of the chair of Housing and Homelessness, and she's driving those conversations internally, and we'll have more to say about that very soon.
Like I appreciate that, and I appreciate that answer. And the pain is very real for our service providers at that interface where they're trying to do their work, and they're running through. And I know I just want to voice it here that they're doing a lot to try to cover these gaps in cash flow to keep the services. They keep delivering the services that are really vital at that sacred interface where those service providers interface with our people who are experiencing homelessness. So I appreciate that work, and I appreciate the work that you're doing, and also the urgency of this. But this is a problem that I hope we can get resolved in the future, so that way we can get these things and we don't put so much pressure on our service providers who have been really under a tremendous amount of pressure for this. So thank you.
I think I just have to point out too, it's hard, and you referenced this in your when you were speaking about holding providers responsible to a certain standard of care. It's difficult to have those conversations when they haven't been paid. So those conversations keep happening concurrently, that they're getting very heavily judged when they're also losing sleep because they can't pay for the toilet paper at their interim housing, quite literally. So I just want to point that out. The money has to get out in time. They start providing services July 1st. That goes for all the funders.
Thanks again for coming. Really appreciate all the insights here too.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Should we revisit?
There's one.
Oh, sorry. Just one?
Yeah, just one. Ritesh Durati, you're welcome to speak. Please unmute yourself.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Okay, so
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
want to say, good morning, everyone. My name is Ritesh. I work for the Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health, right? So specifically supporting the clients in their interim housing. I want to take a moment to speak in support of the strike. I actually first heard about it during a case conferencing call yesterday with staff from our service provider partners, right? So we were talking about the challenges our team and clients are facing every day. Someone mentioned that SEIU was organizing. It really resonated with me. They said that more specifically, Mr. Allen wanted speakers at this union meeting today. So I'm here to say I support, and I do stand with you. We at the county will strike with you. The truth is most people on the front lines are exhausted. We're doing this work because we care deeply about the people we serve, but the system we're operating in is stretched to its limit.
Thank you. Okay. Should we revisit 5.2? Yes, let's do it. Thank you.
Janine Lim, Deputy CFO. We are visiting item 5.2. I want to first address the 42 slots. That was correct. We should note that in the table, in the column noted contract metrics, the metrics stated there apply to the increase of the allocation, not the total contract. So the 42 slots applies to the increase in allocation of $925,000. The total slots, which Abigail referenced earlier, is 1,477 for the contract total of 26,308,285. Sorry, this print is very small for me too. Okay. The next two I will address are the, you asked the question about the timing of the county general funds and why they are being brought to commission at this time. The two ones I will address are Hathaway Sycamore and Whole Child Mental Health. These leasing costs were approved earlier in this month, and because of the timing of that approval, we are bringing that to commission now.
The leasing costs were approved.
The leasing costs, correct.
So providers had to give paperwork and then, okay.
The next one is for SSG. The negotiations for that also became final recently, and the timing of that makes it so that we bring it to commission this month as well. For Long Beach, right. So for the city of Long Beach, we also received confirmation to fund the 30 beds, which brings that to commission at this time. For SSG, we brought the 12 million to commission formally, and now we are bringing forward the 9,114,502 today. Those negotiations also just became final. And those are all the items for under county general fund. Are there any questions?
Does that make sense? Are we ready for?
I do want to note too, we recognize that there are errors in this table. We recognize that our process here needs to improve. This is one of the reasons why we are moving toward a reorganization. As Janine had mentioned, we don't have a department director in contracts and procurement. We lost an AD. We have one on leave, and we are literally functioning with one manager. So we are hoping that with this reorg, we have folks that are in departments that make this process more streamlined, that make these processes like these more accurate and more organized. So we do recognize that, and we aim to improve those things.
Thank you, Janine. I want to elevate something that was in the motion, as it was kind of going back to what Commissioner Gruhl was referencing earlier, which is I know we have county embedded staff to support the execution of contracts.
Correct.
But I had asked when Commissioner Gruhl was still chair that part of the update that we get regularly was on staffing, because one of the things we said in the motion is we expect during this transition that LAHSA would be impacted. We heard from that the capacity would be hit. And so we said the county needs to be prepared to provide additional capacity from whether it's auditor, controller, budget people. So when you come and present on that, this is an update we should be getting every month. So then I can take it back to the county and say, LAHSA is struggling. We've made a commitment that we would support that struggle with staff. So I'm just putting that out there. We need to know this, and then I think I've said what I need to say, but we need to know, because then we're going to go to the county and say, give them capacity. This agency has to stay afloat.
And I just want to note that we have been working very closely with the county this whole time. And in the areas that we can accept the support, we do. And what I mean by can is that the county can only work on contracts that only have county funds on them. They can't be braided with city funds, they can't be braided with state funds or federal funds. So that limits the support that they can offer, though we are really grateful to the county for providing the support that they do, and we take that support every time we can.
Okay, I think we should push this conversation though, because otherwise, to Commissioner Grohl's point, people are just going to get frustrated, and we have to talk about this. I mean, you're just listing all these staff that aren't here. But I also ask Commissioner Sheik if you will please agendize an item where we get updates from HR every month on staff that's
On
being lost.
staffing, like gap shortages, unfilled positions. Is
Yeah.
that what you're asking? Okay, I just want to be clear.
Because I think we'll
Like,
see more of that, you know?
100%. I do want to speak to what I know I've been hearing updates from Geeta though on the staff have been going to the county, I think more than in the past where they can. But I would like to facilitate that more and more if it's possible to do it in areas outside of that too. I don't know if there is. And we can talk about that report. Motion.
Move approval.
It's for 5 do I have a speaker waiting on this? No, okay, thank you. Sorry, 5.2, yes. We have a motion. We need a second.
I'll second it.
Commissioner Sheik,
Aye.
Commissioner Graves,
Aye.
Commissioner Gruhl,
Aye.
Commissioner Perkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Slaza.
No.
The motion received 4 votes in the affirmative, 1 vote against. The motion does not pass.
So we'll be unable to fund those contracts.
So I think we need a plan. What's going to happen? Are we going to reconvene in a week? What's,
We're gonna have to have a special meeting, maybe in the shortest
Yeah.
amount of Brown Act time of allowable, because our funders need that
So what is the shortest amount of time?
24 hours? Or sorry,
24 business
I'm
hours?
gonna ask county council, sorry.
72 hours.
For a special meeting?
Special meeting.
That's what I mean. For a special meeting, what's the,
Before.
so Monday?
At Monday at 11:09.
24 hours. Okay. So I will, well, business days. I mean, I'm happy to.
When's 24? You could do it Sunday morning and say it's Monday. So you will ascertain who can kind of scheduling right
Okay.
away.
Eileen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, back on track. Let's move on to item 8.0.
Good morning, commissioners, the public and LASA colleagues. My name is Sabamwine Chang. I serve as Deputy Chief Community Opportunity Officer. Today, it's my pleasure to share with you an updated policy for LASA's engagement of vital lived experience members. We do seek your approval on this today. Please find the policy draft in your materials under item 8. It looks like this. Okay. And feel free to follow along as I go into my presentation here. Next slide, please. Okay, so next slide. So yeah, just a quick agenda of what I'm about to share. We're going to go into a bit of the origin story of our lived advisory boards, who the groups are that we collaborate with, and in what capacity under that applicability piece. And then we're going to discuss financial stipends as well as some of the other benefits that are offered in the policy. Next slide. Great. So many folks are aware that LASA began working more formally with lived experience colleagues as a result of the County HI's initiative plans in 2015 and 2016. Since then we recognize that institutionally, that it's really vital that we establish ongoing advisory boards to ensure feedback from colleagues with lived experience to inform our policy, program, practice, and research as well. For example, they were instrumental in forming the LA HAT evaluation and that prior work. So we work very actively with our colleagues, lived advisory colleagues. Some other examples of their work, which I can get into later, is the legislative agenda that has been developed, and some great program work in our summit and allyship programs. Next, and so the purpose of this policy really is to, do whatever we can to reduce barriers for participation with our colleagues with lived experience. We always seek to increase transparency, particularly around IRS regulations in this policy, and also detail around our financial stipends and benefits where we had an increase in the hourly compensation. Next slide, please. So just to familiarize everyone with the groups that we work with, our Lived Experience Advisory Board, a Homeless Youth Forum of Los Angeles. Both of those groups, members from those groups sit on LA Continuum of Care Board and the CES Policy Council. The Lived Experience Advisory Board, LEAB, they consider and make non-binding strategic recommendations to LAHSA and its partners on the design, management, and evaluation of the Los Angeles Continuum of Care. And the Homeless Youth Forum of Los Angeles, they partner on and review program and policy development, implementation, evaluation, and data relative to LAHSA's work and the work of its partners. And these are all codified in charters for both of those groups. And like I said, members from those boards contribute very meaningfully to the LACOC board and the CES Policy Council. And our members are technically volunteers of LAHSA. And, in terms of the formal relationship that we have, but again, they're very vital to us, and we really enjoy and appreciate their insights. Then also additionally, this policy doesn't apply to external partners seeking input from advisory boards. We do sometimes have people come to us, and we always facilitate those connections. And so, in fact, we are considering whether we should also develop MOUs depending on, what the ask is of us. So next slide, please. Okay, so the financial stipends. So this policy reflects a new hourly rate for advisory board members at $40 an hour. Previously, HIFLA members were compensated at $30 an hour and LEAD members at $25. That discrepancy between the advisory boards was part of the reason previous LAHSA administration had promised to increase the rate overall and even the rate between both of the boards. Our county partners that are very heavily involved and attend all of our meetings also encouraged us in that direction. And so as of April 1st, 2025, we increased the rate to $40 across all advisory board members. We've also made other significant improvements with our processes. Our team did an audit of the overall process that we take for each member's compensation. We streamlined and improved those internal processes to make compensation more timely. There was a reduction in signers. We developed a compensation tracking system, and we now work very intentionally with our colleagues internally to have regular reports indicating any outstanding board member signatures. We get reports from finance and treasury indicating compensation processes and that people were paid. We also hold one-on-one meetings with advisory board members to troubleshoot any issues they're having. And we now hold compensation office hours to review the compensation process and answer any questions. So I just want to thank my senior advisor, Norma Guerrero Lewis, who was extremely instrumental in getting this done. And now we're much more, just streamlined and quick with our compensation. So the policy also provides clarity regarding federal Internal Revenue Service regulations so that members are informed in choosing their level of engagement and understand what that means for them in terms from a tax basis. It also provides clarity on what types of activities are compensated as funding allows. So only ALASA approved meetings, transportation, trainings, professional development, conferences, also meals, and select meeting preparation activities. Next slide, please. So this just covers some of those details I just mentioned. And I'll just note that the photos from on this slide deck are of our recent Lived Experience Summit, which was really tremendous. They just did such an incredible job of building community together in that setting and really having some meaningful conversations. So yeah, we've identified that how we're going to provide transportation stipends by mileage. Whenever we convene, we do provide meals. And the conferences and training are also pieces that we just stipulate in the policy that we will compensate for as funding allows. So next slide, please. Okay, so our next steps. So obviously you have to have procedures with a policy. And because of our intentional way of being in community with our colleagues, everything we do is a co-creation. We actually have drafts for all of these policies listed on this slide, except for the external partner MOU, which is just something we recently thought about and that we're bringing to the boards next week in 2-day meetings in person to kind of, get their input and feedback, which is always super critical. And, they're just able to give us that feedback and, we want to get their buy-in on these procedures as well. We have support from our HUD TA that's coming out to help us in facilitating that conversation. So we're really looking forward to it. And that's the end of my slides, but I would love any questions that you might have.
I want to say thank you for the update, but also thank you for making sure we're managing this and the intentionality behind it, because it's such a critical piece of our work.
Yep. Thank you.
Can I ask, Saba, how do y'all decide who gets to go to the conferences and training? Because I'm sure there's just a budget.
Yeah, so that was a question that I had. And I actually, think we came up with something really, obviously we would want to have as much funds as possible for everyone to go. But in the past, what we've done is we've created sort of like a non sort of biased way to do it, and by spinning a wheel and determining like who shows up on the wheel to say. But recently, one of our LEAB executive members suggested that we might want to revisit that and ensure that leadership from both of the boards are always, available to being able to get those benefits and then disseminate it. So that's something that we want to follow up with in our conversation next week to kind of talk that through about how we can, add that to our procedures.
Yep. Thank you so much for building all these policies and being so open. I know we've heard a lot from the LEAB members that they feel very heard, and you've been very responsive with my questions. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
So you need an approval on this.
One member of the public who wants to speak on this.
Okay.
Oh. Hey.
Suzette, you're welcome to speak. Please unmute yourself.
Hello, good day, Commissioners. Saba, thank you for that presentation. You brought some important information that I think that I don't necessarily know as someone who has been interconnected with LEAB, well, as an original member in 2017 approximately, and one who stepped down, but I have continued to sit on the PTM of Care Board. And when LASA issues my check, it says LEAB on it. However, I don't think that I was made aware of any changes with any updated dollars that have been provided for those of us who with lived experience who play a role with LASA's boards and so forth. I think that's an important conversation. Oh, okay. So I think that's an
Yeah. Okay. Is there anyone else? No. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, we do need a motion. I'm off my
Motion proposed.
Seconded.
Commissioner Sheik,
Aye.
Commissioner Graves,
Aye.
Commissioner Gruhl,
Aye.
Commissioner Perkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Slaza.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're going to get an update on legislative affairs from Paul.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Paul Rubenstein, Deputy Chief External Relations Officer here at LASA. This presentation is to provide the Commission with an update on our recent and upcoming federal, state, and legislative work. It is as of October, but we created the deck last month, and so some of the slides are a little outdated, especially as some circumstances have been quite fast-moving. The federal slides particularly, you can stay on the first slide for now. The federal slide particularly, we haven't really done much with because of the presentation happening immediately after this one from our Associate Director of COC Planning, Jessica Reed. So she's primarily going to follow up on the NOFO issues that we discussed at the September meeting. Okay, now we go next slide. So these slides are largely superseded, but I do want to note on the federal front that we have continued our advocacy efforts that we mentioned at last month's meeting. Those have included sending an email with sample language for advocacy to local stakeholders. We also shared that language and the messaging with our LA area delegations in the State Assembly, the State Senate, and then also our LA area congressional representatives. We initiated a call with our city and county colleagues who work in DC on advocacy to discuss and coordinate our efforts. We helped convene a meeting of the state's COCs to discuss approaches to handling some of the proposed changes and to lay the groundwork for some proposed group action. We also have connected with key congressional staff, including especially the offices of Senator Padilla and Senator Schiff, and that was based largely on feedback we had received from NEAH, that the Senate is really where, if we are able to make progress on it, the Senate is where that progress will be made. And the primary goal of all of these efforts right now is to persuade HUD to continue with the 2-year NOFO from 2024. That would be our kind of ideal situation, especially with the shutdown compressing timelines. That would be what we would advocate for. However, and Jess will get into this a little more, we do expect that the NOFO probably will be issued soon after the shutdown ends. And so given that, we are also advocating to try to mitigate whatever impacts of the new NOFO that we are expecting the changes to come. And again, Jess will get into that. So the advocacy is kind of two-pronged. I can go to the next slide. So this slide talks about continuing resolutions. Those efforts obviously were not successful. And we are in the midst of the currently second longest shutdown that the federal government has experienced. I will note that during this shutdown, Geeta recently met with a senior advisor at HUD who's based in LA, and it was a report, she said, a productive conversation and working to find common ground. so that we can continue to receive HUD funds even under the new NOFO, and potentially even build on some of the work we already started. As we talked about last time, they are looking at faith-based and smaller organizations. We initiated a pilot last year to provide technical assistance to help organizations that fit that profile get to a place where they can be more ready for government contracting. So we feel like we have a base to build on to try to move forward with organizations that are in that category. And we are scheduling a meeting with them. I believe it's now scheduled for next week, to bring them into the federal NOFO discussion. All right, I think we can go to the next slide. So at the state level, a lot of our work has been focusing this year on HAP. We successfully pressed the state on releasing our second tranche of HAP funding. We were on that pretty closely earlier this year. We've heard a lot today about the HAP 6 piece, and so we began reaching out to our contacts in May in the state to understand what HCD's timing was around that. We have also supported some commissioners more recently, quite recently, with talking points to begin reaching out to state officials around the urgency of the HAP 6 for the LACOC. We are also continually advocating for sustained funding. We were very engaged around HAP 7 advocacy when the session was, or when the legislature was in session. And we also, depending what happens with the federal NOFO, we will be very engaged in advocating for state support, should it be needed or requested, to support gaps that may arise as a result of changing federal priorities. We are also actively planning for the next legislative cycle, especially working in coalition with members of the Bring California Home. And then I'd also want to highlight that our consultants at Daily Strategies have been really helpful, especially around state work, supporting us there. So they're especially our Legend policy team is a little depleted right now. So having the support of our longtime outside consultants has been really helpful to move some of our goals forward. We can go to the next slide. Locally, we have been working on strengthening our partnerships and clarifying LASA's role. Geeta, as the newly appointed interim CEO, has been meeting with city council members and county supervisorial offices. We collaborated in August with county departments on an earlier report about responding to the president's executive orders on homelessness and what the local impacts would be. We're also obviously looking at all the structural changes. Matt talked a little bit about that the city is looking about what their relationship with the city might be. We have connected with CLA about the reports that they are writing on things like contracting, how they would contract COC and the city, those various motions that the city has in play, we've been consulting with. And we will continue to provide input and supply our expertise around those efforts. Finally, go next slide. And as we look ahead, we have some key priorities. First, obviously, working with the city of LA and working on that new vision for what LASA's role will be as we move forward and our role evolves. We want to develop a longer-term legislative agenda that we will present to the commission to work on proactively addressing concerns that are coming up, especially around sustained funding and, depending on the federal picture, working at the state level for not stopgap, but hopefully longer-term funding, especially for things that would be impacted by regulatory changes that we think are coming. And then we've also, harkening back to the presentation we just heard, GA has supported LEAB on their legislative agenda development. And then we're also working to engage HIFLA to help them build out their own legislative agenda. And that brings us to the end of the presentation, but I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks, Paul. Questions for Paul? It's that exciting. I know. Thank you for all the work you're doing on this end. So, yeah.
And thank you. We deeply appreciate the engagement of the commissioners on this, and we will also look to continue further engaging the commission. We think there's going to be a lot of opportunity in the space that we're moving into. So we appreciate your openness and willingness to being a partner in this work.
And every person on the commission was appointed by an elected office who can also should be requested to participate in this work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lights on. Still here. Good morning, commissioners, members of the public, LASA colleagues. Jessica Reed, Associate Director, COC Planning. So before I go into slides, just want to share that this is a pretty sobering presentation and briefing I'm having to provide you. And we did present Wednesday to CS Policy Council, and we are having a special meeting with our COC board next week. We'll go into more detail with them. Hope if you do have questions, I'm welcome to pause, but also if you would prefer to wait until the end, I'm happy to take questions at the end. By now, you're probably very aware of what's happening at the federal level, and we want to brief you on some key information regarding the COC program as we await for the government to reopen. So first, I'm going to cover two things today, a COC funding update and then a planning update towards the end. On the funding side, we're waiting for HUD to release the COC program NOFO, as was mentioned before. They're changing, they've messaged strongly that they're changing course from the 2-year cycle that was announced last year. There have been a series of administrative actions and messaging of policy changes that signal really unprecedented risks to the COC funding. And LASA has been proactively strategizing and engaging with key stakeholders, other COCs on this issue, as we, try to prepare for a lot of uncertainty, but preparing with the best information that we have currently. All right, let's go into it. Next slide, please. Thanks, Ari. So this timeline outlines the administrative actions and reporting that have telegraphed the types of policy and programmatic changes to the COC program that we expect to be part of the upcoming NOFO. From new grant conditions placed on awards from last year's NOFO, reissued special purpose NOFOs around COC builds, really minimal HUD communications, but at least one. Executive orders and news reporting have all signaled major shifts away from the federal homelessness policies from the last 2 decades, and pretty rapid shifts anticipated for this next year. Next slide, please. Oh, and I do want to say something about these slides. I made a few error corrections, and so what's on the screen here doesn't mirror exactly what's in your slide, but it's generally the same content. So I'll point out where we made some clarifications. Okay, so this is a sort of tracker, if you will, that outlines a lot of the policy priorities that have been messaged and where we've seen them circulated. So everything from capping permanent housing at 30% to a lot of prohibitions on programmatic practices that have, and evidence-based practices that have been in the field and developed over the field in the last couple of decades. There's reporting about requiring service participation, which right now is voluntary, to cooperating, things that are really outside of our control, having municipalities and states that cooperate with federal immigration enforcement, and, prohibitions on serving folks who are undocumented, prohibitions on harm reduction strategies, and on housing first. Next slide, please. So what does all this tell us? That we should expect major policy shifts, less time to apply with a lot of high risk and uncertainty. The policy priorities appear to favor interim solutions over permanent housing with that reported cap that we'll go into in a little bit more detail shortly. We've seen NOFOs issued and reissued with extremely short timeframes to apply, as short as 1 week. We are used to having about 90 days to respond to a NOFO, which never feels like enough time, and anything less than that is going to provide additional strain on us. There are also just too many unknowns to know precisely how to prepare, including how will HUD impose that permanent housing cap, what will happen to their tiering process that historically has guaranteed and protected at least 90% of our portfolio for renewal. If they flip that on its head, then that opens up a lot more risk and uncertainty for our portfolio that has, long been considered sustainable and durable. And, in response to a lot of the policy and programmatic and practice changes, will our COC even be competitive in response to these changes? Next slide, please. So just a little bit, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about our portfolio. So the last 10 years has been really significant in terms of growth for our COC. We have the largest amount of funding nationwide as a COC. There are over 400 COCs. We are the number one in terms of how much funding we receive. The second is New York. And since in the last 10 years, LASA has led as the collaborative applicant and lead for the COC and seen our portfolio more than double. And most of that has been in permanent housing, and that is by design. That is because HUD federal policy has been really they moved away from interim solutions with the COC program and heavily incentivized permanent housing with the COC program. Next slide, please. So in terms of how much funding we have and when it will start expiring, somewhere in that over $200 million mark, current funding will start to run out January 31st, 2026. There's a handful of projects that are funded between February, that have start dates between February and June. And then really the bulk of our funding starts to run out in the second half of the calendar year. In December alone, we have more than 50 grants that start to expire. And in terms of the coloring, again, just want to emphasize that most of the portfolio is permanent housing. It really does dwarf all of the other funding that's in our portfolio. Next slide, please. In terms of the people, because obviously this is all about the people, a 30% cap could potentially put nearly 5,000 households at risk. More than 6,800 participants. This is a bit of an undercount, but just meant to give you a sense of just how many people are currently being supported by the permanent housing portion of our portfolio, which is the lion's share. So currently over 7,000 households in permanent supportive housing and in rapid rehousing, which we call TLS locally, and almost close to 10,000 participants. Next slide, please. Again, just sort of repeating myself here, but the takeaway being the terms of project types and amounts of our portfolio. Again, the bulk of it is in permanent housing. PSH is about 170.4 million. Most of that is tenant-based PSH, so we rely on the market and units in the general market in order to house participants. Less than 40 million is in project-based or sponsor-based PSH. We also have some TLS. Most of our TLS or rapid rehousing is really restricted funding that's for survivors of domestic violence or intimate partner violence and youth programs. So you're not really allowed to reallocate from those projects to serve other populations. Generally, that's been the restriction. But clearly the most of our portfolio is in PSH. We have some interim housing and some supportive service dollars, but obviously the bulk of it is in permanent housing. Next slide, please. Okay, so these next two slides, I just want to help illustrate some of the facts that we are using in order to, and assumptions that we are using in order to try to develop some strategies that will go into more detail next week with the COC board. So our annual renewal demand, which is the amount of funding that's needed to fund 1 year of programming for the COC program, is just over $217 million. Of that, our permanent housing portfolio, if we exclude a portion of it that has some interim housing attached, is about 192 million. If we are to cap, if we don't know how HUD will impose the 30% cap, but if they just cap it on our 217 million, that is $65 million. So that means that almost $128 million would have to be purposed for something else. And what that something else appears to be is transitional housing or street outreach at those types of interventions.
TH, not IH.
Transitional housing is interim housing. It's because technically it's shelter by another name. It's just up to 2 years of.
That transitional housing can go up to 3 years.
Possibly for youth programs or for other funding, but in the HUD context, it's 2 years. Yeah. You also lose your homelessness status when you enter transitional housing as well. So
Not classic IH. I mean, that's what I'm saying. TH has implications.
yes, it has very big implications.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Do you lose your homeless status? So these losses of units will not, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm asking really dumb. I'm also really sorry.
No, it's
will not make more homeless individuals according to status, but functionally will.
functionally will. And it will, because, and also I think the key thing here is that the people who aren't, what we just went through is most of our portfolio is permanent supportive housing. Of that permanent supportive housing, most of that is tenant-based permanent
Yeah,
supportive housing.
right.
People in the markets.
Right.
Right. And so we have very serious doubts that the mechanism in the NOFO to make this kind of essentially redistribution
In place.
that those same people who are being
Yes.
served in PSH would even be eligible for the new model.
Because they're not homeless.
Yes. So there may be some other ways.
Yeah, we don't know yet.
We don't know yet.
But this is, I mean, honestly, it seems like you're giving us a pretty conservative estimate.
It is a very conservative estimate. And, unfortunately, the COC PSH is really the backbone of our system in terms of housing. And when we see so many, cuts happening elsewhere.
One, something of obviously this is not accounting for because there's so much braided or combined funding is the loss on another end of our system on TLS and other slots.
Yeah.
So there's not we're not getting like a total picture of the cliff.
Yeah, there's a series of stacked crises heading into next year.
I don't know if it's worth presenting that as a whole at some point, other than it seems rather futile, I know in some ways, but just to explain to the system and the general public the cliff of newly emerging homelessness that will come out of these sets of crises.
Yeah.
I mean, what that means for the system, but also what that means for a system that has no resources and honestly has very limited resources right now to even deal with it.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, you heard the county and the city this earlier talk about that. We know that emergency housing vouchers also face a cliff of over 6,000 vouchers at the end of next year. There's the funding cuts in HAP with the HAP 7 amount, floating around and that being half. So it really is a very compounded crisis.
And every day more people become homeless on top of that, right? I mean, just to underscore that, right? It's a fire hose.
Right. So this is a conservative estimate just because we are excluding some other permanent housing that is targeted, that has some restrictions around it. But if that is part of the pie, then another 10 million sort of gets added to that orange middle chart there. Next slide, please. This just sort of splices up the different types of permanent housing. And when we're thinking about a cap, really there's, it has to come from permanent housing, clearly. We have to start talking about the types of permanent housing. Do we need to prioritize? We are going to have to prioritize as a COC types of permanent housing, whether it's project-based, sponsor-based, or tenant-based, TLS, the very little TLS that we have, but some or rapid rehousing that we have. These are all the types of deliberations that the COC board and the commission are gonna, and other partners are gonna be taking up. I believe that ends the presentation. Happy to take any questions. Oh, no, on this portion, and then I have another update.
You want us to ask questions now?
I
Portion thus far, do you want?
It's just on the funding piece. The other piece is on the planning update, so it's up to you.
Functionally, when would this hit the system?
Starting January 31st. And I think with the issue with the NOFO and the timing right now, so normally, under normal conditions, we have a NOFO that's released sometime in the summer, around July. It's usually due around September or October. It takes HUD a few months in order to review those applications, and typically around January is when we hear a federal award. And then it then takes a series of months for HUD to actually get those grant agreements out. We are very used to having experiencing delays, which is why we've over the years extended grants to make sure that they start later on in the year to account for that slow period. At this rate, we just don't see how HUD would make a funding award announcement by January, which means that that delay is just going to be compounded into next year, and our providers who rely on that funding to get us to have the grant funding in place, then to be able to reimburse them, will be impacted.
So historically, Jess, if the money, so because we see that some of the programs do start to expire, like you said, in January. So normally, if it was a normal year under reasonable leadership, we would have gotten the awards would be awarded in January. So some programs would still be operating and have to wait on their reimbursement, but they had grown used to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask a couple other questions? One is, I mean, this is just you having to project. Well, I think first, let me just say, this is the best contingency planning happening anywhere on any grant program. So thank you so much. I wish we had this on everything, counties everywhere. So thank you. It's incredible, Jess. Number two, do we anticipate that if they put key provisions on these dollars, and let's say we decide we have a few programs that'll comply with whatever the language is. I'm not sure that's going to be possible, but let's say we did make that decision. Are they saying they're going to make them apply jurisdiction wide, even for other programs?
So we're thinking we're still applying as a COC, as a collaborative applicant. We are aware that HUD has been, representatives over the last few months, been meeting with missions and faith-based organizations, sort of advertising that they can actually apply directly to HUD and go on the COC process. So I think our hope, and as the lead, we really want to bring folks in. We're hosting a meeting next week. We're going to bring in faith-based orgs just to help demystify the process and understand what it takes to apply for federal funding, what it takes to run federal funding, because we have so many wonderful providers who are out there who champion that they don't take any public funds, that they rely on private funding in order to deliver their services. So we really want to help educate, make folks aware of what it means to take on federal funding. Also, that in this moment, what the impact would be, because the reality is that having to reallocate $130 million to create, let's just say, new transitional housing or street outreach services comes at the direct expense of people who are currently housed. And so they need to understand, everyone needs to understand that impact. Our policy council folks the other day made that painfully clear, that we really need to message that as well. So our hope is that we're able to bring everybody into the fold and have a joint application. We are talking to partners, the county, and others who do the type of work that might fit the sort of direction and the types of programs that the administration wants to see funded through this program. So we're having those contingency planning discussions now.
Let's say an individual organization applied to the COC. Do they have to, like, we have rules in our COC where we prioritize people who are chronically homeless, for example. Would they have to follow those, or if they have their own direct grant, they can just do it however they want?
No, so all COC funding is supposed to be bound by
The board.
right. The regulatory language around the COC is you have to follow coordinated entry, you have to follow COC policies that are adopted. So whether they are funded through a recipient like LASA or HACLA or LACDA or directly, they still are bound by COC policies.
I'm sorry, I have
It's
one
up
last
to us to
question.
monitor, though.
Which is just what happens to if the COC money, let's say LASA is not, we don't apply, like how many staff and how many people are funded through like the planning grant? Because there's actually a lot of staff that does this work from the money from the COC.
Certainly. I know I don't know. I think my team's about 8 folks, but there's a lot of folks. Our planning grant is really small compared to how much we actually are expected to do and carry out those activities.
So you're leveraging
1.5
funding from
million.
other streams. So this is,
I believe
okay.
so, but I would defer to our leadership on the finance side.
Just a follow up on that question. Commissioner Perkins asked is, thank you. If HUD it sounds like HUD has been in direct contact with some organizations that they like in our region, and have encouraged them to be ready to apply directly. So not via LASA to that. If they apply direct, and maybe you don't have an answer for this, but if they applied direct and received those funds direct, would they be bound by like the CES and kind of using our systems? Or
I believe so.
you believe so?
They
So
would
okay.
still, I mean, it still is up to, I mean, the regulatory, like the regulations don't give us a lot of teeth. Like as collaborative applicants and leads, it doesn't actually give us a lot of teeth because if you aren't holding the purse strings, right? But there are other ways I think we can be creative in trying to help folks follow a unified approach towards achieving our common goals.
A coordinated
Yes,
system. Yeah, that would be good.
Thing like that.
Absolutely. No, thanks. And just, I really want to commend you also for this contingency planning. It's very difficult to understand what's going to happen. I also want to commend you for opening up the aperture in terms of organizations that we work with at LASA to think kind of outside of our normal, the normal folks that we've worked with over the years, to try to find groups that might be different and service things in a different way. And because this is actually really forcing us, whether we like it or not, to change what we're doing. Right. That's basically what we expect it's going to do. So that means that we have to be ready to adapt. It's not easy. But if we want these resources, and I believe we really, not only do we deserve them, but the people who are under our care depend on these. We've got to find a way to adapt and to make the most of this and find the good handle in this bad news and try to make the most of it. So I want to thank you, and thank you for kind of looking at it that way.
Yeah, they say never waste a crisis.
Right. But we will adapt when we can in a way that doesn't destroy people's lives. So I mean, we're not just going to be able to adapt. That's just not going to be possible.
I mean, I don't think anybody wants to destroy anybody's lives, but I mean, that's not what we're saying. We have to take this reality and try to do our best to try to bring the resources. Yeah.
True.
And that may mean finding some other alternatives than we've used in the past.
Yeah. And I just thank you for the kind words. I just want to say I'm one person. I share this work with so many wonderful thought partners. I'm just one person. I'm just the voice, the messenger, manager of the doomsday clock. It feels like sometimes, but there's a really wonderful team and partnership out there. One other thing I just need to make clear is that just because we reallocate 130, if we're forced to reallocate such a large portion of our portfolio to put towards new programming, there is no guarantee that funding comes back to us. So in this climate, I think we just we won't know, but I think we have to be prepared that it's really very much unguaranteed.
I think we also have to talk to partners who may not traditionally be people that we always work with. I mean, we do, but like landlords are going to be incredibly impacted. These are 9,000 people to 7,000 households that will no longer be able to pay their rent.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the impact of this, the downstream effects of all this are, yes, the immediate impact to households and people losing their stability, the loss of revenue for landlords. I think the impact to our hospitals, the impact to our jails, all of the downstream effects of rapidly increasing homelessness. And I will say too, I think when we met with others, Paul, I've been working with Paul and Jorge on meeting with other COCs, talking with other Cs about how they're thinking or strategizing about this. I think we all assume that there's going to be some sort of litigation tied to this NOFO when it comes out, but all that does is stall and sort of delay things, and we're still going to be asked to apply. Long Beach is preparing sort of two scenarios. They have their sort of what would in a normal year, what would their normal list look like in terms of applying for funding, and then preparing a different version in order to respond to this so that they have some, in case there is that sort of litigation, that there is some standing to say this, we were ready to apply with what we would have preferred. So we're talking to others and trying to figure out what other strategies we can employ here.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. I have just two more slides to update you on. This is just our other planning work around our COC governance charter. So just two slides. So we are, as you all may be aware by now, we've been working with HUD technical assistance for the last year on, and also with the other three COCs in the county that share our HMIS implementation. We have been able to find some really good consensus and buy-in towards enhancing our governance over HMIS by creating a shared table that would be an advisory policy making advisory entity to all four COCs equally. We also are planning to make some other updates to the charter to clarify things that we've heard questions on around what is the selection process for the collaborative applicant, what is the process for proposing amendments, and then there are some administrative updates to make. Really, the HMIS process, what we heard from our other COC partners is our initial timeline of trying to have this done by December was a bit too aggressive. There's a lot of other pieces that we need to factor in. So we're going to be extending this into 2026. We spoke with HUD before the shutdown about this because they fund the technical assistance that's supporting this. They seemed very amenable to it, and as soon as the government reopens, we'll submit that formal justification for extending this work, and we have an indication that they'll approve it. I think next, yeah, and I think the next slide is just sort of the next steps we're going to take in that effort. Any questions about this? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, also, I will say with the NOFO, it's the same team. So I think extending the charter will also help us capacity wise, just being able to respond to the NOFO as well. So thank you for your grace on that.
Thank you, Jess. How many? One. Okay, online speakers.
Robin Canada, you're welcome to speak. Please unmute yourself. Robin, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to have us go on to closed session. So I'd like to have everyone leave the room. That doesn't need to be here. Okay. We are back in session. There were no reportable actions in closed session. We will be tabling all the remaining items until our next meeting. What am I saying?
I would like to do items for future agenda.
Oh, okay, we can do that. And then I have two speaker cards. So can I hear any items for agenda requests for future meetings?
Thank you, Commissioner. We're still waiting on the commission's role in RFPs. I know you have that on there, so we'll get that. I think we should get a presentation on commissioner attendance and because it's really tough to get quorum if
Yeah.
people don't come. And then if we can start getting a monthly update from HR on updates and staffing gaps.
Okay.
Specific to departments so we understand where the gap is. Thank you.
Thanks. And I'd just like to reiterate two of the things I put in last month. I'd like to add an inclusion of formal action items after our meetings, that our commission meetings, so we know what we have to follow up on and have those read out into the minutes. That way we know what we want to try to do after these meetings so that we can all be more productive and we can hold people more accountable. I also would like to, again, reiterate that we should do a review of LASA legal counsel with a clear identification of who does what currently and how conflict of interest is handled and formally disclosed. And then a third thing I'd like to add is I'd like to take a look at specifically the accounting related to the Urban Alchemy Safe Sleep parking site at 2320 South Central, which we approved $2.3 million to serve 88 people in that site. I think there are only about half those are actually available, and I believe that we've paid full amounts for that site. I'd like to just have a presentation on exactly what's going on in that specific place. Thank you.
Received. Thank you. Okay, we have two public comment cards. Susan Price. Hi, Susan. Feel free to move that mic down.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today.
Feel free to just move it. Yeah. There you go.
First things first. Thank you so much for the work that you do. And that's you as well. What you're dealing with is you're on the front line in a battle against the epidemic of homelessness. And it's been created by the largest investment market in the world, the real estate market. Hundreds of trillions of dollars traded. But understand that the housing problem is the unhoused and the homeless is a matter of life and death. 48 is the life expectancy for a chronically homeless person, and 78 for a housed person.
Wow. Thank you. That's time, unfortunately.
Stop the sweeps because that's trauma on top of trauma. Let the community help you with resolution and reduction, as in the Alliance versus LA.
Thank you. That's time.
Please, let me say this. Please, Skid Row campus, care campus, if you can put something there so that the community organizers in Skid Row can come and find out when the next sweep is, when you're going to clean the streets, so that we can get those people prepared for that, so it's not so traumatic to them. Please, let us have a booth there where we can counsel them and prepare them for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Lamar Washington.
Morning. Lamar Washington. I've been homeless quite a while. I used to come up here and go to the board every Tuesday, but since then I've been going through a lot. LASA sent me somewhere yesterday where they had no beds, and I'm very tired of being homeless, tired of being away from my kids. I'm tired of struggling. And if y'all would stop giving us the runaround, people wouldn't take matters into their own hands. The longer y'all give us the runaround, the more we're going to want to take things into our own hands, and it's not going to be pretty. And y'all cannot blame us for taking matters into our own hands because we're not in charge of what y'all are in charge for. So if y'all stop bullshitting, then maybe things will move along a little better. Until then, expect chaos. Expect that.
Thank you, Lamar.
There's one member online.
Wait, we have one online.
Critic held Truth Bay, you're welcome to speak. Please unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, so my name is Dr. Truth Bay. I'm a policy analyst. And Lamar Washington, the gentleman that just spoke, is one of many people that's trying to get permanent housing for many years now. So Samuel Gonzalez and Alicia Tully, who are both from your homeless engagement team, gave us, they said literally they had no beds for the last 3 days. And they referred Lamar to 171 Gless, which they have no beds. So can you please find a bed for Lamar today? So that way he can work towards permanent housing. There should be a shelter somewhere in LA City, LA County that you guys are funding that can safely have him in a bed. He was in Safe Landings prior, a place called Home on 88th and Broadway. Very abusive. The case managers there are not nice to the people, but please take care of Lamar, somebody in that room to place him in a
Thank you.
shelter somewhere.
There are no more speakers.
Okay. With that, I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you. Thank you for staying so we can do that.